Another person is new. Justin, this is their first class.
Okay. Should we? Should we probably send a text out to find out? Okay, fine. I won't start yet. We have a big class today, a full class. We have a lot to accomplish. I want to finish going through the course outline. And when we're finished going through the course outline, I have a lecture, a PowerPoint presentation prepared for us today. And I want us to go, the last class that we did, I wanted to go through that. And I never got a chance to, but today we will. And I have some other external issues. It's not necessarily things that we need for Caribbean thought, but since this course deals with a lot of, you write a lot, you think a lot, and you write in an academic frame. You will hear me talk a lot about writing in an academic frame. So therefore, there's a way you write. So writing is important, and I want to spend at least 15 to 30 minutes talking about writing, because at the end, this course, a major part of this course you have to write, submit essays or journals or interaction papers. You have to also do an essay that you do at the end of the course, and it's worth 30% of your grade. In addition to, you have to do a final exam. The final exam has an essay component as well. And I want to talk with you, and even with it, you guys are doing final research or the other courses, and you're an undergraduate student at a 4-year college, so you do a lot of writing. And I believe that some of the problems that I am noticing is students are having a problem in terms of writing, and by writing in terms of structuring their responses in an academic style or frame. So it's writing. Now, of course, I'm going to tell you that I eschew intellectualism. I eschew privilege and the status quo. But yet still, we say that when you're in Rome, you do what you want to do. And it's important, since we're learning, we're in an academic field, and as a school, we also have to follow an academic system or an accreditation body. And so therefore, there are certain expectations. So how you write is important. Referencing and documenting is important. And but we're not going to get into referencing and documenting today. I want to quickly talk about when you write. One of the ways you write is you want to develop. The first thing you want to do, you want to brainstorm. You want to brainstorm. That's the first thing you do. You want to brainstorm. Okay, somebody's asking if I'm Jamaican. Yes, who is asking if I'm Jamaican? Yes, I am Jamaican. Yes, I am Jamaican, but I'm here in the US. Oh, you know what? Okay, Jacinth, you will get a chance to. I want to know about you a little bit. So everyone got a chance to introduce themselves. So we would like to know who you are. But I want to just quickly talk about. Developing an outline. I want to do that real quick with you guys. When you write, one of the things that there are the two most important things you do. You want to develop. Okay, part of writing, you also develop an epiphany. When you write, you get an epiphany, but you get an epiphany when you read and when you engage with external stimuli. Okay, when you engage with external stimuli. So that is important. Reading and exposing oneself, becoming more aware. And sometimes just thinking about the thing. Talk about having solitude. Socrates says the unexamined life is not worth living. Spending time to, say, for example, you have identified a particular topic that you want to do. or you have a particular topic that involves writing that you want to do, you want to think about it. You want to read the question, or you want to read the topic, or you want to or explore the thing. Think about it, and push it to its logical end. Play with it, with what you know, what you've heard of. Think. You want to spend some time to think about it, meditate, and whatever comes to mind during the thinking process, you throw it down on a paper. You call that brainstorming. You write. You always have a notepad or something to write, and you write everything down that comes to your mind. Write everything down, and then after a while, you then begin to develop an outline from that. Okay, and also you want to do a URL search for materials or sources or information that speaks to some of the ideas that comes to your mind about what you want to do. Or you engage with family or friends, especially if it's a personal journal that involves doing a genealogical research or something that involves tracing your own roots. Okay, and we ask for sources when you think about your heritage, when you think about your roots. How do you trace it? Where do you trace it? How far back do you go? Okay, so you think about that. That's important. That so much comes to my mind. So I'm now thinking about the issue of heritage, the issue of roots. Of course, I'm going to do some research about what is roots, what is heritage. When people talk about roots and heritage, what we're talking about, we talk about your ethnicity, your racial makeup, your nationality, those kinds of things, outside of your any kind of religious understanding of things. So we want to, so you start thinking about that, of course, and then of course you start doing some wide research around that. And of course you're going to talk to your mom or your dad, or your aunties and your uncles and your great grand. Of course you're going to talk, where am I from, mom? I mean, where was I born? When was I born? Why was I born? I mean, what was happening? Why did they give me this name? What was happening in 1979? Why you gave me Renaldo? I was actually curious about that. I was very curious about that, so I started pushing the bar a little bit. Okay, but anyway, that's a name thing. But outside of that, in terms of genealogical research or genealogy, you talking about your line, thinking about your family line, so to speak, or your family tree, and how far back. And of course, I deliberately asked that question, that ask you guys to do this particular activity, because we will be having the Urban Indian Heritage Society next week, Monday, and I just put an announcement in the JTS online Moodle platform, but I'm not seeing it. Something is wrong with the Moodle. It's really getting on my nerves. Anyways, so I just made an announcement, and I told you that I wrote a letter last semester. We talked about the whole issue.
Excuse me, please, sir. Good afternoon. Yeah. Sasha is in the waiting room.
She's in the waiting room. No, she's not in. How is she in the waiting room? I turned off waiting room. I turned off waiting room, so we shouldn't. I turned off waiting room. So once you have the link, you can just. I'm not sure why Sasha. Did she send you a text, Suji?
She sent it in the WhatsApp group, sir.
Oh, she just needs to click the link and just bring her straight to here. Can someone please send the link to her phone? But I want to spend just a few minutes, not yet. I'm waiting for everybody to come to the platform to talk about writing, developing an outline, and the importance of developing an outline when you write. Now, towards the end of the course, I want to talk about pitching an idea. The last class I said I wanted to do, the last semester, I wanted to do something about podcasting. I never got a chance to do that. Fine, but this class, I want to spend some time in terms of pitching. How do you pitch? Pitching an idea, pitching a thought. This is Caribbean thought. And there is an end goal to this course, okay? We want students to not only be able to develop their critical thinking, but we want students to be able to contribute to academia, to contribute to thinking and to thought, which has also dogged us as post-colonial peoples of the global South. Okay, and so we want to develop our writing and our thinking and contribute and expressing that thinking, and also expressing it within the 21st century. And what's happening in the 21st century? We talk about artificial intelligence, the sophistication of technology, utilizing the language of the day. Okay, that is very important. So I want to spend some. So I had sent an email to the lecturers, to the lecturer group at JTS. Well, whenever I get something, I'm going to share it about how do we pitching an idea. And I learned something very, very important, which I am incorporating in my own business, which I'm going to share with you. And that's not long and that's not difficult. It doesn't mean you don't have to have a podcast to do that. If we have time and you guys want to learn about creating a podcast, I can show you guys how to do that if we have time, but we may not have time. But what is very important that I want to zero in as external to this class, but very important to this class, is developing an outline. How do we develop an outline? When do you develop an outline? Okay, tips on developing an outline, examples of basic and generic outline. And why is an outline important? Important. Why is an outline important? And of course, I'm going to tell you that one of the things that I won't tell you that I won't talk about that yet. And I want to talk to you about there's a difference between informative writing and persuasive writing. Okay. Say, for example, if I ask you to trace your genealogy or trace your lineage, trace your ethnicity or trace your heritage, talking about your ethnicity and your roots, and as far back as you can go, and to provide source. Okay. Now that is not persuasive. That would be more informative. So you're not writing to persuade, you're really writing to inform. And of course, okay, and there's a difference between informative and persuasive. Now, if I say to you, write an essay or write a short essay or blog or comment or interaction paper, challenging what Franz Fanon has said, okay, or what Franz Fanon that has said in his Wretched of the Earth, okay, about the colonized man, and the fact that he is a global creature. Sorry, he is a political creature in the most global sense of the term. Okay. Is it true that the colonial man or the post-colonial person, man or woman, let me use inclusive language, persons, and we are part of that post-colonial milieu, okay, because we were once colonized and now we are now independent, and so we are now considered post-colonial or post-independent, and we will talk about that. We'll get into these terms: nationalism, socialism, democratic. We will define that, okay. But if I ask you to write a paper or to explore the ideas of Franz Fanon, which is couched in his book Wretched of the Earth, and in that book he makes the argument that the colonized or the post-independent formerly colonized man, okay, if he said that we are political creatures in the most global sense of the term, what is he saying? And challenge that narrative. Now you can develop your own topic as it speaking to challenging that narrative, but of course that will be persuasive. That will be persuasive, and there is a way that you write to persuade, okay? And your goal is to persuade the reader to agree with your opinion. And it involves a combination of facts, informative and personal point of view. It focuses on the benefits of your argument. It uses strong comparables and facts for both sides, okay? Informative essay advocates your reader to a particular type of information. It's a bit more journalistic. So I want to just briefly, and it won't be long. Now, outside of that, I think, we have 12 persons here, so that's great. Sorry, I'm getting notification. So there's a difference between informing and persuasive writing. And when you write, it is always good to think to meditate, and then to brainstorm. So and to develop an epiphany. From epiphany, you organize what you have thrown down on paper into an outline. An outline is important because it helps you. It constricts you. It helps you to behave, so to speak. It helps you to see your writing. It helps you to. It focuses you on your writing, because when you're writing at an academic level, you're making comparisons between variables, between X and Y. You always, when you write, you're using variables or components, and you make comparisons, a conclusion based on an interaction between two concepts and ideas. Okay, and that is important, and you want to develop that in your writing. And that helps to give you structure and format, okay? So I want to spend at least 10 minutes or 15 minutes towards the end of the class getting into that. Now, okay? So that's what we will quickly delve into today. Now, welcome to Caribbean Thought, everyone. Some of you are just joining us. Welcome to the class. Last week we started getting into going over the syllabus. And let me ask, do you guys all have the syllabus? Do you all have the syllabus?
No, sir, I don't yet.
Okay, so Susie doesn't have the syllabus.
Same for Sasha.
Sasha is new. Welcome to the class, Sasha. I think Miss Campbell, I was going to introduce the head of department earlier. She was with us. I am so sorry. I need to get her. Miss Campbell was just here just now. So I'm happy that she. Yeah, Chantel.
I have sent the syllabus to everyone on Monday. The only person that hasn't gotten the syllabus is Maxine Martin. That's a new person, but everyone else got the syllabus.
Okay.
Check your emails and you will see it.
All right, so yeah, check your email, and if you're not part of the WhatsApp group, please join the WhatsApp group. And
I think it's also on the Google Classroom page, right? You posted it on the Google Classroom.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Moodle, right. It was on Moodle platform.
It's on Moodle. Yes, and I post up a lot on Moodle. There's some of the things that are hidden from you, but I'm slowly learning about them. So if you go, I use Moodle. I post up a lot on Moodle. So please go on Moodle. Follow me on the JTS Moodle platform as well. There's some stuff that might be very instrumental to this class. So last week we started, and I made an announcement about an upcoming event. Next week, Monday, is a major class. Please be on time. We will have the Urban Indian Heritage Society, and they will present to us, and they will have an hour and a half to present their theory, to present their argument. And I'm going to talk about it again for those of us who missed the end of it last week. The Urban Indian Heritage they are saying that that our heritages, our families have been misclassified. Americans have been misclassified. Urban Americans have been misclassified as being Africans. Sorry, Tuesday. Sorry, was it Monday or Tuesday? We have the class. Monday. So right. So next week Monday they'll be here. So and we're going to open it up to everyone. And in fact there's a petition. There's a petition right now called the American Inclusion Act, where people are signing. We're signing to talk about this drive to reclassify this misclassified Indians, which include they have a genealogical study that speaks to the Caribbean people. We are part of that as well. The Jamaicans, I think they have conducted genealogical research that seems to suggest that, but I won't say much about it until they come on Monday to do the presentation, and you will get a chance to engage them. I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be a powerful class. I am curious about it. I've been learning and reading, and I'm so happy that they're going to be here. Last class, we talked about Haiti. This class is about our heritages, which is very important. Now, before we go any further, I want to spend a quick time to just have the students who are joining us for the first time to introduce themselves. So guys, please, last week I had asked the question, but for this class, since you guys are joining us, I'm going to ask the question, you answer the question, and then you introduce yourself, your name, your what year are you, a little bit about yourself in terms of what is your major, why are you doing what your major, what do you hope to do with your major, what do you hope to get out of this class, and then okay, so that's what you will do. So, but first, this is the question, and it's open to everyone. By the way, when you come to the class, if there are hot button issues in the news or in the Jamaica Gleaner, the Jamaica Observer, something that you want to comment on, please, let's introduce it straight with the class, comment, okay? So that when we will discuss it with you guys, any major issue. But the question is, I would like to see, what if I were to ask you guys, what is Caribbean? How would you define what is Caribbean? What is Caribbean? What is it to be Caribbean? And what is Caribbean? And probably you can, and what do you think is Caribbean thought as well? Because some of the students got a chance to define that. And secondly, what does it mean to be a first generation American? What does it mean to be first generation American? And would you consider Caribbean people as as Americans? Would you consider Caribbean people as Americans? So those three, what is Caribbean? And we're going to discuss those. What is Caribbean? And what is Caribbean thought? And what is Caribbean? What does it mean to be first generation American? And are Jamaicans and Caribbean people, would you consider them Americans? So first, and after those three persons introduce themselves, the other students in the class can respond if you would like. Now, I have to wrap up this section at 8 o'clock because I have a special presentation that I have prepared for you guys for this class entitled What is Critical Thinking, which is part of Caribbean thought. But okay, so now the floor is open up to you guys. Who is first, Sasha or Jacinth? Since Jacinth, you went to the last class.
Yes, sir.
Were you at the last class?
No, sir. This is my first class.
Oh, well, I would love to learn about you. Introduce yourself.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Justin Foga. This is my third year. I'm currently pursuing a course in social work. Why do I choose to do social work? Because as a child, I always want to do something important with my life. What was the other? Well, basically that's it, sir.
What do you mean by that?
About what, sir?
What do you mean by, you said you do social work because you want to do something with your life. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I want to make a difference, sir.
A difference? What kind of difference?
Like, for example, I want to help people.
How does social work help? What are some of the problems and challenges that's happening today? Why you think social work as a vocation or as an occupation can position and help you to achieve your goal of responding or helping people to resolve some of the issues that you see in society?
Based on my experience as a child, sir, growing up in a home where I was abused, so that is one of the reasons. Using my experience, sir, I think I can help other people that go to the same thing as a child.
Okay. All right. No, okay, that was powerful. That's a powerful response. Thank you so much. So you want to be, so as you believe that social work will help you to respond to issues of abuse in families, in society, the kind of abuse. Okay, so that's good. And then so what is social work, and how do you practice social work? What does social work look like in the Caribbean as against in other countries? What is unique about the social, about the society? And we talk about social work, we're talking about work in society, but it's not just work in society. It involves close connections to the ground. It's a deep engagement to communities, which makes up societies. People in community, working with people in community, in their realities, dealing with their realities, helping them to deal with the realities or the shortcomings. Now, of course, there are challenges in society, and I've oftentimes said that, say, for example, social welfare. We talk about welfare society. The Caribbean and many people in the global South, our societies, we say that those societies have dependencies. They suffer from lack, from vulnerability. Okay, we're not as competitive as others, and dependent capitalism or lack of prosperity, whatever the case might be, and so the issue is social. So there are some social because relative deprivation is a theory that says in societies, it's a Marxist. And of course, when you study society, and part of Caribbean thought is studying societies. So when you study societies, you want to ask in whose interest? How is the society made up? How is the society structured? How is it developed? How is it organized? What's the economic system, the political system, the philosophical system, the theological system? We're talking about schools, and the challenges of society. Social work helps to meet the challenges of society that stems from relative deprivation. Relative deprivation is a Marxist materialist ideology, Marxist, that says, and you find that many Caribbean peoples, have that kind of feminist or Marxist bent, and feminism stems, in a sense, comes out of this Marxist. You will hardly find any conservative feminist, just so you know, okay, or capitalist feminist or a socialist feminist. Most of the feminists are capitalists, but Marxism talks about, there's a Marxist materialist. When you study, according to Marxist materialism, and they have a theory called relative deprivation that says, and I will talk, and later on in the course, I will show you a diagram that speaks to what we're talking about. In communities or in a society where you have a high amount of poverty and high amount of income inequality, and the book which is the main text for the course, which is Neoliberalism, Globalization, Income Inequality, Poverty, and Resistance, the book that I wrote, which is really a socio-economic study of Jamaica, and the Caribbean, and also looking at income, using data to study income inequality and poverty, and how structural adjustment helps to create income inequality and poverty, dependency, and lack. Relative deprivation says that, so in societies where you have a high amount of poverty and income inequalities, you say, okay, when you look at the Jamaican society, when you look at the Caribbean, is there what's the poverty level? What are the poverty levels? Of course, compared to other countries, Jamaica would be considered a relatively poorer country compared to a post-industrial country, but we're not as poor as Haiti or Guyana. Okay, but yet still, if I talk to you about what the Black position in societies where you have high amount of Black people or people of color or people or urban, okay, people who are black or people of color, where you have more brown people, then you find those that, especially in the Americas and in this part of the world, or in the world, basically, majority of these peoples we are either poorer than other peoples or other races, poorer, and in terms of, and there are high amount of income disparity, high amount of educational lack, of course, high amount of crime and violence, lack of or limited resources. And if you were to study black countries, and then if you were to go to where you have where the majority of the population is black, and then you come to a first world country or post-industrial country or countries of the global north, you find that majority of those countries have, where the majority is not black, but you find that you have pockets of black and brown colored people. And when you go into those, when you delve into the makeup of these communities where you find these people, that you find a similar situation in global south countries, or in countries where you have that were formerly colonized people who were formerly colonized, or people in the Caribbean. When you look at what's happening in the Caribbean, where you find the majority are people of color, or people who are brown, you find more browning. But okay, you come to the US, you go to the UK, you go to France or Germany, or some of these post-industrial countries or wealthier countries or more developed countries. Or okay, you find a different, except for Asia, you find a different situation. You find a situation where black people are the poorest wherever you are in the world. Why is that the case? Caribbean thought looks at that. We delve into that. Why is that the case? That we are the poorest in the world, wherever we are. Now, and relative deprivation says when you have high amount of crime and violence and income inequality, you find that those societies have more crime and violence. And of course, if you were to look at what happened in, say, for example, in the US or in the UK or wherever, you look at some communities, the black communities are among the most violent. And in cities where you have people of the global, immigrants of the global south, or you have people of color or more brown, and you find a similar situation. But therefore, how do you practice what you practice? What is the ideology behind your practice? How do you deal with the issue of lack? How do you deal with the issue of poverty, lack of resources? How do you deal with the issue of the organizational dynamics in the home that leads to abuse and so on? How do we deal with that? Of course, if you read Edith Clark and Rex Nettleford, they talk about illegitimacy within family systems, in certain family structures. We talk about that, okay? But I went off on a tangent, so sorry about that. Let's go to so thank you so much. But let me ask you a question, Justin. If I were to ask you, what is Caribbean? What is Caribbean? Your idea of Caribbean?
I would say island. People from the islands.
People from the islands.
Yeah.
Okay. People from, what is the Caribbean and what is the socio-economic context of the Caribbean? People from the islands, but you know what? So you mean like people from Hawaii? Would they be part of the Caribbean? Will they be considered Caribbean?
Mm.
From Hawaii? No.
That's a good question.
Well, when we talk about Caribbean, you could be talking about geographically speaking. In other words, okay, or you could say technically speaking. So when you ask about, if I ask you to define something, you might say, well, you can give me a technical definition within the industry, or you can give me a lexical definition, one that's dictionary. Okay, or you could give me a popular definition, okay, which is popular understanding. But of course, Hawaiians aren't considered Caribbean people. Okay, they're, I think, Pacific or Asian or something of the sort. Okay. However, some of the experience of Hawaii might be similar to that of Caribbean. Okay. But when we speak of Caribbean, though, we don't get as far as to be Hawaii. But we'll talk about. Okay, next question. What about if I were to ask you, what is first generation American? What are we talking about? First generation American. When we talk about first generation American, what are we talking about?
Sir, you're talking to me, sir?
Yes.
Could you please repeat the question, please, sir?
When we say first generation American, what are we talking about?
The first world country like America. Hello, sir? Oh, the hotel. First world country. Right. I don't know.
Sasha, sorry, you guys weren't hearing me. Sasha,
Sir,
welcome to Caribbean Thought.
that's my second class. But
Oh,
for the question, I think it would first generation, the first to be born in America. That would be that's my opinion.
But when you say first to be born, like, okay, fine, but what does that mean? It could be first to be born, could be.
All right, like my grandma, my mother is an American, and then she gave birth to me, so I would be the first generation from her.
Right, but right. So if your mom left Jamaica or any country in the world and go to the US, and then has a child, that child will be considered first generation. We're talking about line, yes?
Yeah.
That will be first generation. And then the second generation will be the lineage that's from you will be first generation and your child will be second generation, so on and so forth. Okay. So that is, but that shows connection, that shows rooting. Yes?
Sir?
Okay. Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right. The second question that I have for you is, when we say Caribbean, what are we talking about? How would you define Caribbean?
Small islands in the, what do they call it? East Central, South Central Americans. Sir, I'm not sure. But it's the island closer to America, between 80 back to like Ghana, or Trinidad and Tobago, Turks and Caicos, those islands.
All right. And when we talk about Caribbean thought, what is when we say Caribbean thought, what are we talking about?
The different views or perspectives of each Caribbean people.
Okay, great. All right. Good. Now, thank you so much. I just wanted to get your perspective. Anybody else who is new to this class who we haven't heard from?
Sir, this is Maxine's class.
Welcome. Let me see what you look like, Maxine. And Jason, I didn't see you. I know how everybody look, but I don't know how you look. Let me see what you look like.
Sorry, sir, I can't turn on my video.
Why?
Because I just got I was not prepared, so I'm sorry about that.
Well, please come.
Time.
Well, okay, good. Well, you have time to get prepared. Anyway, fine. But welcome to the class, Maxine, and tell me.
Thank you.
Why are you doing Caribbean thought?
I'm doing Caribbean thought
Mm-hmm.
to learn about the Caribbean region, how we think and how we work together, and what are our perspective of the Caribbean region, and how do we function in the Caribbean and in other countries of the world.
Oh, nice. I like that. I like that answer. I like that perspective. That is really good. That's really good. I like that. How we function in the world, and that's important in this global world, is very important. Having a function. The question is, do we have a function as Caribbean people in the world? And what is that function? And what does that look like? Do we have a function, Maxine?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what function? What is that function?
Well, our function,
And by that we mean what value can we provide to the on the global stage to the world?
all right. So because of our mix that came about from slavery and all of the different regions that came together to make us who we are.
Yes.
I think we are educated people. We try to come up with we try to come up with original things. We add value to the world by we go into these other countries and we help to build. Even if we are farmers, we help to feed the world. So we add value in our perspective.
Okay, fine. Okay, all right. We add value to the world. Okay, and then you can look at the value in terms of the GDP and the exports in terms of music and all of that, and track and field and sports.
Yes, sir.
So on and so forth. But the question. All right, so we add value, but what benefits is there to arrive from the value that we contribute or from our function?
I think in terms of benefit, number one, it puts us out there not as people who have nothing. All right. So when we think of our athletes, when we think of our singers, when we think of our educators, it puts us out there as people who have something to add to the world, to make the world a better place. So we can compete in the global marketplace, and not because perspective may be that we are like some underworld people in the cave. We don't see the light, but when we come, when we
wait, hold on, stop.
Who we really are.
Somebody can join. Anybody want to join? Why do people think? Where do you get that from? That people think that we are underworld, backwards. We are in other words, you mean that we are Jamaicans are backwards or not as exposed, or where is that what you're getting at? And why would people think that? And is that true?
For me to answer, sir?
Anybody can answer, or you can answer.
Well, I would want to say, because we are coming out, I have to always talk about slavery.
Yes.
So because we are coming out of that slavery mentality, we are always perceived as the underdogs, as the people who have nothing to contribute. But we surprise the world. Say about Marley take up a song and put it out there. We surprise the world with our talents. We surprise the world with our the different things that we bring to the table, because they would say, well, we are, from the islands, we don't have anything, to add.
But if we have a function in the world, and we have demonstrated and we are adding value to the world, why is it that we are not reaping the benefits in the world from all of the contributions we are making?
Oppression, sir.
Oppression. That's a good question. Anyway, that's a good question. Anyway, we won't delve in, but I won't push you no more. Anybody else want to say anything as we get ready to begin the lecture? Well, we have already started, so to speak, but that was good. I like that. That's how you want to, when you respond, that's how you get into things. And then, of course, you want to support it with sources. Okay. And that's where I come in and I will talk about sources. Because I will talk about my good friend Ramesh Sarwan, who wrote the book, The Challenge of Structural Adjustment in the Commonwealth Caribbean. But I won't, should I go into it, where he says that the structural adjustment issue is not surprisingly one surrounded by intense controversy and emotion. This is because it does not concern simply with economic policies or improving government performance, but brings into question basic economic philosophy and ideology, and may also involve the effective transfer of decision-making from local hands. Decision-making from local hands. Of course, I won't get into that, but this is quite interesting because could it be that we, the Caribbean people, are part of a strategy unbeknown to them, or maybe they are known because this was written by a Trinidadian professor from UWI, but it was written after the fact. But the decision to globalize the Caribbean, as the Caribbean became independent, we are met with a world speeding towards globalization. And we adopted policies of structural adjustment which helped to liberalize or to open up our economies to allow for penetration. The word penetration is important. Did I put that on here? Yes, penetration. The word penetration is important. Okay, the more penetrable you are, it speaks to your position in society and in life. And the less penetrated you are, it speaks to it speaks to the issue of power and the issue of privilege and dominance. Okay, the Caribbean people, they say that we are penetrated by outside values and ideologies. Okay, while what of our penetration of the other, the inability and the ability to penetrate, is the utilization of a sexual trope that will help us to conceive of the Caribbean in history and today in relation to its external. And that is important. The issue of penetration, we talk about the issue of abuse. The abusing is an issue of power. Okay, abusing agreements and so on, but we won't get into this. Is an introduction. This week is an introduction week. So we talk about the Caribbean has added value to the world, but the benefits to be derived is still to be seen. We talk about, when you look at the Caribbean, you see dependency. What you see lack, in a sense. Of course, I came to the US, I studied neoliberal globalization, and I wanted to understand why is the Caribbean people and people of the global South, why we are so poor compared to the US. But of course, then you started doing anthropological studies and you go to communities of color and it's as if you are back in Jamaica, the Caribbean. Okay, so it is the Black position. So I want to study that dynamic. I want to study the dynamic. I want to understand what gives. Now, when you study something and you learn about what gives, then you want to now come up with a strategy to ensure that that doesn't happen again. Caribbean thought is part of that. Caribbean thought is a course that is a violent kind of an academic course, because it is, in a way, it is part of critically thinking and rethinking one's position and looking back at what has happened in society or in the history of time that has led or created the Black position or the Caribbean position that creates the socio-economic challenges of our society. So of course we will look at that. Okay. Now, Caribbean Thought Lecture 2, today we're looking at conceptualizing the course Caribbean Thought. What is Caribbean? And what is the socio-economic context of the Caribbean? Of course, I have delved into that issue in the book Neoliberalism, Globalization, Income and Inequality. And of course, the Caribbean Reader, written by Norman Girman and others, you will get to see that writing later on, speaks to that issue. Oh, I'm supposed to be looking at the syllabus, but we will get some time in. I will delve into that in a few. But, and by the way, you guys had a homework that you were supposed to email. I don't think we saw, I checked with Chantel, we haven't received any email from this asking you guys to trace your heritage. Okay, it's very important that you do this, especially for what we're doing next week, Monday. So the rationale of doing this homework is just to prepare us for what's happening next week, Monday. Okay, tracing your genealogical heritage. But what is the Caribbean and what is the socio-economic context of the Caribbean? Of course, we don't want to make the mistake of generalizing and lumping Caribbean people in one. As much as we are of similar experiences, there is also a dynamic. Homi Bhabha, in the book Location of Culture, speaks to that. Okay. And also Franz Fanon and Paul Philcox and so on talks about being careful that we don't lump people into one as we promote this independent, this sovereignty, this self-determination. But okay. But what is the Caribbean is important. And it involves the Caribbean as a people. It is involved the Caribbean as a place. But that question also involved the Caribbean with its problems. Caribbean as a people, Caribbean as a place, Caribbean with its problems and challenges. And of course, we will now look at solutions of dealing with these. Now, if you were to, part of looking at the Caribbean, of course, you want to look at it in its geographically speaking. And of course, you talk about the English-speaking Caribbean. The English-speaking Caribbean and the West Indies have the experiences of slavery or the experiences of colonization might be a little bit slightly different. Okay, from if you were to go to St. Lucia, who changed hands with the Spanish, so with the French and then the English. And of course, Jamaica is Spanish and then the English. Okay, or you might go to another Suriname or Belize. And the dynamics and the peoples and places in Barbados, what happened is that you find a lot of mix between the plantocracy that remained after independence and after slavery was abolished. There was a nice intermingling, okay, between the plantocracy and the slaves that were there, as against what happened in Jamaica and Trinidad. A lot of them left. But in the Caribbean, if you were to look at the population, the racial makeup or the ethnic group in Trinidad, you find a 50-50 or 49-51 dynamic in terms of those of African ancestry as against those of Indian ancestry. Okay. So, but of course, in the Virgin Islands and Jamaica have a similar situation. We're talking about the dynamics, the demographics of the peoples there. So when you're studying something, you want to look at the demographics, you want to look at the society, you want to look at how the society was constructed in terms of politically and sociologically, and you will ask in whose interests and in whose benefits and so on. You ask those questions, and then of course you try to answer those questions by reading various sources that speaks to that. All right. So what is the Caribbean and what is the socio-economic context? We won't necessarily delve into the socio-economic context today. We will do that next week, Wednesday. But according to Norman Girman, it is the Caribbean is an invention of the 20th century. The Caribbean is an invention of the 20th century. That's bold. That's a bold statement. Is it an invention? Why would we say that it is an invention? We say that it is an invention because we will all agree. We would say that Christopher Columbus discovered or the Caribbean is part of the Americas. The Americas is part of the New World. When we talk about the New World, that means it's part of the modern world. The Caribbean, as part of the New World, was said to have never existed before, and it's a new construction. And it's part of the Americas, and by that, and the Americas, we know, was heavily colonized and dominated by Europe. So of course, the Caribbean in itself, which is part of the Americas, which is part of the New World, and and just so you know, to say that it is part of the New World, it's dominant language. It's part of the white supremacist language, okay? Because there was a world before. There were people before Christopher Columbus discovered Jamaica and discovered the Americas and much of the Caribbean. There were peoples here: the Taino people, the Awawakan people, the Aztecs, so on and so forth. But of course, no credence is given to those people because of the issue of privilege. That, okay, if anything was not discovered, if it's not discovered or written by an Anglo-Saxon European man, then it never existed. So to say that, when we say of the New World, then it was, okay, the New World, the Americas, it was not part of the activity of the global world with slavery and so on. It was a newly constructed and created world. Yes, Ramesh.
Sir, as it relates, as I was saying before, as it relates to Christopher Columbus discovering Jamaica or the Caribbean within that essence, and naming this region the New World. Maybe one of the logical reasons they said it was new, maybe it is new to them, but not new to the people which were living within the Caribbean, as I said, as the Arawak Indians and those people. It was new to them, but not new to the people which were living and settling here before them.
Yes, that is true. And language is very important. At first, when I said that, I was very skeptical of this when they said Christopher Columbus discovered. But then I said, wait, he did discover it within the eyes of the Anglo-Saxon, within the eyes of the white supremacist world. He did discover it, because the American Indian was also seen as a group that was below the white race. Yes. All right. The American Indians were seen as very primitive compared to the Europeans. They were easily taken over and dominated. Okay. And so if it was a discovery, and of course I said to my last class, it was not a discovery, it was a capture. Okay, it was a capture. It was theft. Okay. But they used the word discovery so as to protect any levy or any attempt to recapture what was taken. So they used the word, or it could be, as Romain had said just now, of course, to them it's a discovery. And of course, nobody existed outside of them anyways. So to them, it's not just to them, it is all of them. And within the status quo was the white Anglo-Saxon supremacist society. We talk about Franz Fanon, talk about the Negro is not any more than the white man. He said that because we know that within the colonized world, the wretched, according to Franz Fanon in Wretched of the Earth, the colonized man of the global south or the colonial world, who are we? We are political creatures in every sense of the term. Okay, so of course, the Caribbean was said to be in a sense a new invention or a new discovery or a new world, part of the new world, part of the Americas. So of course we said that the Caribbean is an invention. The Caribbean that we have today, there's no denying it. We said that, okay, the Caribbean, much of the Caribbean got independence from their former masters through ceremonies that were arranged, but not through violence, as if all men aren't created free, as if we needed a paper to say that we were free and to say that we were independent. Nevertheless, that was what happened, okay? Freedoms and independence were arranged, and they were given by one man who is God, in a sense, because if one man can give another man independence and freedom, it would then suggest that you are creature and he is creator. It means that, in a sense, but that's an argument that you can challenge, okay? But so the Caribbean is an invention of the 20th century. The Caribbean came about, okay, it's an invention of the 20th century. Even its political system, the kind of political system we have in the Caribbean is what? If you go, most of the political system is a Westminster system or an American system or whatever the system. The system of governance was inherited. Okay, it comes from the inheritance of the former masters. So the Caribbean, we say, is an invention of the 20th century. Okay, and even its peoples. And I say that the Caribbean are people who are hybridized, to be of, and who are hybridized, people who are mixed, of a mixture. We will get into that, okay, in this course. So when you look at the Caribbean, we say that we talk about important themes, topics, and contributors. With the word immigration, when you want to study the Caribbean, one of the topics you might want to do is the issue of immigration. Could put it into perspective. The way in which people migrate, the way in which people travel, the way in which people of the global south travel as against the way the people of the global north. One of the ways you want to study a particular thing is to compare it with other things. So, okay, the Caribbean is part of the global south. The Caribbean is, much of the Caribbean, or all of the Caribbean was dominated by the external, by Europe. Okay, much of the Caribbean. Now, if you look at people travel for opportunity, if you look at the immigration and what's happening in the world today with immigration, and by the way, immigration is a very important issue that we will deal with. We're not dealing with immigration now, we're just introducing the concept of immigration. We will deal with immigration later on in the topic, but immigration is a very important topic when you study Caribbean thought. When you look at how people travel, it puts it into perspective. Policies, immigration policy in post-industrial countries towards people of the Caribbean is restrictive and draconian, as against immigration policy towards countries countries in Europe, or wealthier countries, or people who are, or countries where you have a less concentration of Black and brown people. Okay, if you look at how people travel, it from the global south to the global north, it is more seen as as you see, the word that comes to mind is refugee, and the picture that comes to mind, and of course you look at the picture of the man traveling to Jamaica as against the man from Jamaica traveling to the global north. Okay, you look at the long visa lines. Okay, and I understand that one time that Jamaicans were being banned to come to the US, or there was restrictions on Jamaica coming to the US during COVID, and those restrictions weren't lifted, but in other parts of the world, they were lifted. Okay. And so when you look at travel and how travel happens and the policy behind it and the ideologies and the way in which the world view the Caribbean can be seen in terms of how the kind of immigration policies that countries have towards people in the Caribbean, and the way people in the Caribbean are seen. And we will talk about that in the preface of my book. I said in the book, when When we hear of Jamaica or the Caribbean, we think of beautiful islands of paradise with sun, sea, and sand, reggae music, cannabis, and Irie people like Usain Bolt, people who are living out their best dreams, desires, and lives. But this book analyzes this motif. When you talk about motif, M-O-T-I-F means the prevailing idea, okay? Prevailing idea. But this book analyzes this motif, prevailing idea, given the historical and current economic and political situation in Jamaica and the Caribbean and the global South. So when we talk about Caribbean thought, we are studying what? We're studying historical and current and political situations. Historical and current economic and political situations in Jamaica and the Caribbean and the global South. In an attempt to escape the adverse realities of poverty, inequality, and injustice, the peoples of the global South find themselves in North metropolises in the global North with very little agency, advocacy, or support, and minimal change to their lives. In fact, except for the use of cleaning neoliberal waste, the immigrant, of which the Caribbean man is usually portrayed as an alien with 3 heads and big sharp teeth, seeking to steal and to destroy the profit and to disrupt society. As such, we will discuss Black, Brown, and Pan-African struggles for economic prosperity, justice, and freedom, and consider efforts, abilities, or inabilities to chart their own futures since decolonization and realize real political independence and economic prosperity. Perhaps they are charting their own course by the few corrupt of the status quo who are benefiting from partnerships with the neoliberal regime of the Washington Consensus, advocates of the bureaucratic phenomenon, while the masses are left behind. I'm going to stop there because I will get into that some more. By the way, notice I used the word status quo, Washington Consensus, and bureaucratic phenomenon. Again, write those words down. I have said just now, and notice I'm very poetic. I use a lot of literary devices when I write to bring color in the writing. I said here, in fact, except for the use of cleaning neoliberal waste, the immigrant is usually portrayed as an alien with 3 heads and big sharp teeth, seeking to steal and to destroy the profit and to disrupt society. I'm using literary device, comparing the immigrant to an alien, to a monster. Of course, the word that is used for immigrant is alien, illegal alien or legal alien. And aliens are who? People who are from outside, people who are different, people who are weird and strange, okay? People who are seen to be suspicious. But in a sense, the aliens are seen to have some kind of superpower. And okay, but they are seen as weird and strange, but they have superpower. Superpower because notice this, what is the alien superpowers here? In the book here, I suggest with 3 heads and big sharp teeth, seeking to steal and to destroy and to disrupt. Oh, this is the superpower. The superpower is this: except for the use of cleaning neoliberal waste. Except for the use of cleaning neoliberal waste. So cleaning neoliberal waste, cleaning the elites, the dominant class, those people of the global North, the alien, the Caribbean man, the global South man. Because you usually talk about the Mexicans, they are hardworking. The Jamaicans, they're hardworking. Okay, they have 3 jobs. Yes, they're good with domestic work. They're good with domestic work and with customer service. And you find that call service jobs or industries are outsourced to people of the global South, like the Caribbean, because they're good with customer service, because the kind of education system that we have is geared towards preparing people of the Caribbean to clean neoliberal waste, to do customer service, to do tourism, because in the global South, they can only do tourist work, they can only do jobs that borders around tourism or customer service, okay? or if or taking care or baby or nanas and mamas, nannies, or to work as farmers. And they have the Canadian program where lots of Jamaicans come to the farm to do farming and then they have, and of course, big arrangements occur between governments of the global south and the global, where they sign contracts, the work program. We can't get quick visas to travel to the global south, but they will do a program where you get to do farming, and it's very restrictive. And if you do one off, you will work forever on the farms or as nannies or taking care of rich people kids and so on and so forth. Okay, you see the kind of what the world is created. We talk about the Caribbean being is an invention. Okay, and the kind of jobs and the way and the education system within countries will determine the kind of jobs or the kind of industries you work. And of course, there is a valuation system placed on work. Okay, your work. Okay, work carry a kind of work carries with it a kind of compensation. But who determines this? A society that is built and based on privilege. So that the Caribbean man and the global South man and the black man will forever be second place or third place, because the education system and the work that is prepared for him based on the education system, whether in the local or in the global, will keep his ability to earn above a certain. He will never earn above a certain above a certain level. So the superpower of the Caribbean, we talk about the superpower. The superpower is, that's it, customer service and tourism, or working in a farm, or having 3 jobs. And when they have elections, or when there is a political disturbances within the global South, the global North, or the Caribbean man, or immigration is an issue. They pick on immigration. They scapegoat the immigrant. The immigrant is scapegoat. Or they take American or UK or the others' jobs, the native job. They take their jobs. They take the native jobs. They take your jobs. And when they take your jobs, they take your jobs because they can have 3 jobs. I don't know how they can do 3. I don't know how they do it. Okay, that's the superpower. In one sense, it is good, but in another sense, it is used as a scapegoat. So when you look at immigration, it gives you a perspective as the Caribbean is seen in the world, in a sense, in terms of immigration policies and how they are treated. So I talk about that in the book here. And so I talk about Black, Brown, and Pan-African struggles for economic and prosperity, justice and freedom, and to consider efforts, abilities or inabilities to chart their own futures since decolonization. Colonization, the raw definition of colonization, to colonize somebody is to control someone. But colonization is a process to systematically strip away control, to systematically strip away the human, to redefine to be redefined by the external, when the internal is redefined by the external. And of course, I went on to talk about perhaps they are charting, Caribbean people, we are charting our own course by the few. And who is charting our own courses? The few, governments and rich people, corrupt of the status quo, the dominant class, who are benefiting from partnerships with the neoliberal regime of the Washington Consensus, the neoliberal regime. Neoliberal means new liberal, liberal free, neoliberal regime. People of the people who are promoting liberalizing economies, breaking down barriers in order to allow for what? Penetration. Penetration is a powerful word. To allow for penetration. We got independence in 1960s. The Caribbean, a lot of the Caribbean countries. Okay, and by but by 1958, Jamaica found bauxite, and in 1960s, a lot of Caribbean was doing well, and they were growing and benefiting from it in a sense. But of course, still there was lack. But the issue of competition is important. You don't want people. Countries compete for competitive advantages. You are competing for who will dominate sugar, who will dominate gold. Okay, so there is so we live in a competitive world. So the Caribbean man, and as Caribbean people, we have to think in competitive ways. The reason why the Caribbean is the reason why our socio-economic position is what it is today is because of the competitive world that we are in. So therefore, we have to think in competitive ways as a people. But I said to you, one of the ways, if you are part of the dominant class, or if you have a competitive advantage, you want to maintain that in a world of privilege, power, position, and status. Yes? We live in a world of privilege, position, and status, and they want to maintain that privilege. What is the strategy of doing that? By developing lackeys. Yes? What they call the house slaves mentality. A few people within a particular lower class. You give them some breadcrumbs. You give us some breadcrumbs. And then the neoliberal regime of the Washington Consensus, advocates of the bureaucratic phenomenon, bureaucratic Pharisaicism, do as I say, but not as I do mentality. You create NAFTA and World Trade Organization and to spur up free trade, but guess what? You can't subsidize your farmers, you can't subsidize, but yet they are in the back subsidizing their own farmers. And then they penetrate your market with their goods, retaking their dominance, their ability, and then you can't export because they create restrictions and certain codes. And you can't restrict, you have to meet so much in order to export, but in order for them to come to you, you do it, okay, and there's so much. That's what we're talking about here. Do as I do, but not as I say, but not as I do. So when you study the Caribbean and studying anything or society or studying a group of people, you want to how is society constructed politically, economically, racially, so on and so forth. In whose interest or what benefit? Now, as Caribbean people who are studying and of course, Caribbean thought comes under post-colonialism within the humanities. It comes under post-colonialism within the humanities. And it is, in a sense, part of interdisciplinary studies. And I'm actually in about 4 weeks from now, I'm going to be talking about Caribbean theology. And I will talk a little bit about interdisciplinary studies and how this is part of interdisciplinary studies or liberal arts and liberal studies. Liberal arts and liberal studies looks at issues of human values and ethics. Okay, that's what we're talking about, human value, human values, what it is that we value in society, or what are the values we place in society that creates the dynamic in society, how people communicate in society, how society is constructed and the exchanges that take place in society, human value, okay, and how those values are determined and dispersed, and then the issue of privilege and power, the issue of imposing values on others, the issue of inclusivity and as against exclusivity. Of course, so Caribbean thought is a part of post-colonial studies, which of course, and of course, we are people within a post-colonial milieu. We in this class, we are studying post-colonialism and colonialism, and we are part of that. when someone writes a book or write a paper about colonialism and post-colonialism and so on, or activism, that person is seen as an activist in a sense, because you're critical, you're looking at your position, that your dynamic in society and the discrimination in the world, and the continued discrimination, whether through de jure or de facto factors, that continuous discrimination and exclusion and disaffirmation. So when we talk about, the post-colonial man or people within this class, or the book that I have, we're said to be part of critical race theory, maybe. We don't talk about that in Jamaica. Critical race theory, we critically re-examine society, revisit. Say, for example, we talk about the urban Indian heritage society, re-looking at our heritage. Talk about Haiti, re-looking at the history, and making new conclusions about them and about what has, and in fact, by revisiting history, they have now come to be suing France, because France, which now admit that they should not force Haiti to pay the debt after they got independence. But that was only possible because of research and new research and study by who? By the Haitians themselves, by the people who are involved and affected by the history that they are studying on and reporting on. So we are studying history ourselves and our position in history. Okay, so when someone does that, it is considered history from below. So we are doing history from below. People who are vulnerable population, people who are vulnerable, people who are once excluded, people who are once affected by oppression and discrimination and so on, or affected by history, or who were on the other side of history. When we provide a perspective, and that is why I like this course. That's why I like courses that talk about Caribbean theology, Caribbean thought, because you are doing the study yourself. C.L.R. James, come on, Brathwaite, and Walter Rodney, V.S. Naipaul, they're all considered people who are part of the subaltern, people who provide perspectives of history and society from below, history from below, people who are considered as part of the periphery, who are off-center. Homi Bhabha talks about the center versus the periphery. That's very important when you do post-colonialism or Pan-Africanism or Caribbean thought. Okay, we're talking about, when you talk about perspectives, or what is normative, or what is part of the status quo, what is part of not fundamentalism, but what is part of what is not taboo, what is the accepted understanding that is within a supremacist view. Okay, when you go, that is the center. Say, for example, you will hear me talk about Homi Bhabha, who talks glowingly of V.S. Naipaul, and I love Naipaul. I've read many of V.S. Naipaul's novels. But if you read V.S. Naipaul's novels, and you guys can do an interaction of one of his novels for this class. If you read one of his novels, he talks about, V.S. Naipaul talks about who are the main characters in V.S. Naipaul's books. Where are they from? From the country, from the village. Okay, little boy in a shorts, yes, here in a comb, villagers and so on. People who are not promoted and talked about. They're not usually the hero. They're not the hero. Like, say, for example, many Jews have a problem with Jesus because Jesus is just not dominant enough. He's not a warrior hero enough. Okay, he's not like the Achilles of the Greeks. Okay, he's not like the Achilles of the Greeks. He is too meek and mild and sacrificial lamb. So in a sense, he is so when you study Caribbean thought and post-colonialism, we're talking about the periphery, what those off-center characters, people who are not promoted, people who aren't beautiful and amazing. Now, that's the subaltern. We will talk more about so we're looking at history from below. We're providing a subaltern perspective of history. Now, there is also, now, let me see what time it is. 8:33. Okay, we're going to take a break in 2 minutes. Another important theme and topic that we have to consider is misclassified urban Indians. It is said that many Jamaicans are under the impression that they bear no resemblance and connection to the original, to the Arawakans who lived here. I think I spent some time, talking about this. And I just want to quickly refer, for those of us who did not have a chance, what do I do with this? I want to escape. There we go. Let me just, for those of us who did not get a chance to hear the full article, I wrote an article to the Gleaner, to the Jamaica Gleaner, and I deliberately wrote that Gleaner because I knew I had this class with you guys, and I wanted to do what I want you guys to do. So I'm going to do it first and then ask you guys to do it. Write an article to the Gleaner and have it published on an important topic, on any topic that speaks as a Caribbean person, that speaks the Caribbean perspective. So I wrote and did anybody hear did you guys hear the end of the last class where I was reading the letter to the Gleaner that's talking about the misclassification of urban Indians? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Where did you guys all hear? Well, did you guys hear the end? I think I did it towards the end and I only saw 4 people in the class. But did you guys all read the article that I submitted to the Gleaner, or did you read it in the Neoliberal, or did you hear that? Did you hear when I presented it last week?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. I see a Dane L. Nelson. Oh, Dane. Dane, were you at the last class?
Yes, sir.
Well, I see you say functionalism. Now, why did you say function? What is function? Why are you talking? Now, tell me about this.
I wanted to have, what was going through my mind when you spoke about the, I don't remember the term you call it, that word, let me look back at it, that word, liberal waste. We are talking about how Caribbean people were basically trained for particular roles, and it's really the lower level roles. And it reminds me of that theory that speaks about education, especially functionalism and education, where it speaks about how we were actually educated to fit within particular roles, farmers and nurses and field workers and basically tradesmen and so on. And that came back to mind when you were speaking about it.
I am so happy you brought that up. This is how you do learning. This is powerful. Thank you, man. Amazing. And of course, if you read Harry Lambus, Emile Durkheim, and these people of the functionalist school, of course, they talk about looking at society, but the way how they looked at society was a heavy-handed way. In fact, if you talk about Edith Clark and many Caribbean people of the previous schools, and the sociology that we're exposed to is a sociology of the functionalist school that looks at society functioning within certain ways based on institutions so as to prevent disorder. Yes, but let me tell you, you're going to hear me say this. If you study Karl Marx, if you read Karl Marx's book, Das Kapital, He talks about the economic history of society, where he challenged Adam Smith's book that talks about that, where he studied capitalism and talked about hard work. Capitalism was based on hard work and labor. And of course, but the wealth, capitalism and the wealth of nations. But if you look at Das Kapital talked about the fact that the accumulation of capital didn't occur from hard work. One group or class of people went on the fields and through violence stole the other people's property. That's what happened in America. That's what happened in the in Africa. Okay, a theft. And then you know what really happened. And then you go around, and then they turn around and create laws and sweet society based on institution that functions, that as if you study functionalism within a certain way. And law and order and laws create all laws and to prevent their theft, in a sense. That's quite interesting. But of course, you talk about functionalism, functionalist theory of society. What informs functionalist theory of society and the kind of society we have? You want to look at Plato's Republic. Talk about everybody in their proper place. Yes, everybody in their proper place in society following a particular order, or the world order. The world order is for the Caribbean to occupy a certain space, and for the post-industrial and the white man to occupy a certain space. Everybody in their proper order. And the way in which society is, the way in which that functionalist understanding of society evokes this socialization, where we are socialized in a certain way through education or through institution or a certain way to think in a hierarchical, privileged way. So we can't see anything beyond hierarchy. We said, okay. So yes, that was quite powerful. That was so if you want to create an understanding, if you want to study society, you can also look in terms of a functionalist understanding of society. Okay. Now, as against the radicalist. But just so you know, so I wrote an article, and the article says, "Dear editor, in light of this new debate surrounding misclassified urban Indians, I'm writing to explore the topic of Jamaica's identity and heritage, specifically in relation to the Taino people, who were the original inhabitants of our land, while acknowledging the presence of East Indians and Chinese who arrived during the era of indentured labor after the abolition of slavery in 1865. The majority of the population, comprising individuals with black or brown skin, is believed to have African ancestry, following the eradication of the Arawakan Indians by the Spanish. This sets Jamaica apart from other Spanish-occupied West Indian islands like Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, Belize, and Suriname, which retained a small native Indian population despite the Spanish invasion. Do you guys understand do you guys understand that first paragraph? I said, in light of this new debate surrounding misclassified urban Indians, I am writing to explore the topic of Jamaica's identity and heritage in relation to the Taino people, who were the original inhabitants. And I said, while I acknowledge the presence of East Indians and Chinese who arrived during the era of indentured labor, and you guys know what I'm referring to when I talk about indentured laborers, yes? And that was after the abolition of slavery and the emancipation. And later, the abolition was 1833, the emancipation was 1865. The majority of the population, comprising individuals with black or brown, is believed to have African ancestry, following the eradication of Arawakan Indians. They say most of us are from Africa. Now, this sets Jamaica apart from other Spanish-occupied West Indians, because like Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago, Belize, Suriname, there was nothing in history that documents them not having a small group of Native American Indians that remained on their islands. But in Jamaica, there is no document of that or recording of that. And Haiti as well. Jamaica's history documents but we're hearing something different now. Jamaica's history documents the replacement of the native population with African slaves brought here by the Spanish after the English defeated the Spanish in 1655. Jamaica became a significant port for the slave trade and for sugar plantation or exportation. However, there is limited information available regarding the slaves and individuals whom the Spanish had freed following their defeat. I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this again. However, there is limited information available regarding the slaves and individuals from the Spanish, whom the Spanish had freed following their defeat. It is uncertain whether the small group of people who served the Spanish during their rule were of African or Indian origin, as the extensive trade of Africans to the island did not occur before 1655. So how is it that these Spaniards were said to have Africans on the island who they freed after the invasion of the British? That could not be right based on logic and reason. So where they get these people from? They must have been some urban Indians or some Indians, on the island. Nonetheless, those who were freed by the Spanish sought refuge in the mountains and established maroon communities that persist to this day. Now, the question is, were these the original Indians? Those who had the maroons, were they, have we misunderstood our history? Now, when we think about Jamaica's identity, let's put this into perspective. Jamaica's identity, we will all agree, extends beyond ethnicity. We are more than just ethnicity. We encompass a diverse range of people united as one. However, it is undeniable that the majority of our population has a predominant African heritage stemming from the era of the slave trade. However, the Urban Indian Heritage Society, the UIHS, an American organization, is currently challenging this native by presenting compelling research and data that suggests Jamaicans have a rich history connected to the native Indians of the island. That is revolutionary. We've never heard that before. They argue that genealogical research reveals an urban Indian root in Jamaica, providing an alternative perspective to our historical understanding. And by the way, they have a petition and it says, you have an Indian in your family. What is misclassification? Sign the petition for the misclassification of American Indians. When the Urban Indian Heritage Society has organized a petition around this called Remedy for the Misclassified People of North America. They are demanding for the American Indian Inclusion Act to address the mistreatment and erasure of the misclassified American Indians by the United States government. The petition demands reclassification of ethnic birthrights, the return of occupied American Indian lands, restitution, punitive damages, institutional reform. The UIHS lists several demands, including the creation of a genealogical committee to examine bloodline lineage, the establishment of an oversight committee for tribal membership appeals, and the recognition of the American Indian Political Party. The petition also calls for the removal of taxation on American Indian lands, the repeal of HR 4238 Special Reform Bill for Social Services and Education, and the implementation of American Indian Studies throughout educational institutions. Restitution measures are proposed as well, such as the creation of a trust for restitution funds and the reimbursement of educational fees. The petition demands public hearings and the formation of oversight committees to review and implement the American Indian Inclusion Act. It addresses various government departments and agencies seeking redress for the misclassified American Indian who experienced paper genocide. Notice I say paper genocide. In other words, through paper, they have eliminated and wiped out a whole race or set of people of urban Indian American heritage through paper. In other words, right now, in order for you to claim heritage, urban and Indian heritage, you have to demonstrate this, that, and the third. So through paper, they have committed genocide or ethnocide and policide through politics. The petition will be presented to the United States Congress along with a detailed manifesto of grievances. Of course, we are particularly excited to facilitate this particular presentation by UIHS. They will be at Jamaica Theological Seminary next week, Monday, and they will present their arguments, and we will have a chance to grill them and to question them, because they are also doing research in Jamaica, and they also organize a genealogical presentation. They are even leading and facilitating discussions about Jamaica. These American Indians, sorry, these UHIS people. No, they're my friends, so some of them. So I need to know, but they're my friends. But I'm going to challenge them. I'm going to push back. What gives them that right to be able to make such? But okay, through research, they're doing research. Okay, so we want to hear their arguments. We want to hear the presentation, and we want to do some research ourselves too. And I say to you, what is your lineage? What is your identity? From where does it come from? What informs it from the roots, in terms of your roots? Do you think you have any Indian heritage? How would you know that? How would you know? Okay, so when we come back, we will begin with that. Okay, I'm going to give you 10 minutes break. And when you come back, I'm asking you the question, what is your heritage? What is your roots? Okay, and how far back can you go? Where do you get the information? Do you have any Indian heritage in you, and how can you know? How do you know? How can we find out? It was it was not anything that, by the way, the assignment is not, as long as you do the assignment and send it in, you get full marks, okay? The sources that you get will be the sources, your parents and grandparents and your aunties, because it's a personal research. You won't be able, unless you do some kind of genealogical research, which we don't have now. There's a new discovery. I know they are even calling for the establishment of a committee, a genealogical research and committee and systems to sponsor research around this. And they also have a program around that where you can track your research. But so outside of that, how far back can you go within your own families? Yes? Or do you have any artifacts, any things, any pictures or writings or artifacts that you have that speaks to your generation that goes? That's what I'm talking about. Yes? And when I say what's your sources, who are your sources? I didn't tell you who your sources are because I want to find out to see if you understand what I meant by sources. Depending on what you're writing about will determine your sources. If you're writing about yourself and to trace yourself, your sources will come from you and those who are connected, external to you, but connected to you. The people around you, people in the community, the artifacts and the things around you. Yes, that speaks to you. You may not be able to find a book written by your grandparents. Yes, you can use that, or an article. Okay, but how far back can you go? And why can't you go beyond that? Okay. And do you think you're of an Indian heritage? And and why or why not? And if not, why not? Why can't we? How is it that we? Okay. So we will spend 10 minutes and getting into that real quickly. So we come back at 9 o'clock. At 9 o'clock, we will be back. Okay. We are officially on break starting now.
8 o'clock for us, sir.
So, yes, 8 o'clock for you guys. All right. Yes.
But I wanted to make one quick comment.
Sorry. Yes. Go ahead. I like when you guys.
Yes. When I was growing up, the people the older people around me, when they refer to somebody as a maroon, usually those persons have a very dark complexion and what we would call in Jamaica pretty hair. they were more Indian looking here. Those are the people that I knew our older person referred to as Maroons. I was kind of taken aback when I realized that the books are now saying Maroons were runaway enslaved Africans. But when, as I said, Maroons were the people that our foreparents referred to as Maroons, had a more Indian look.
I want that when you write your interaction paper or whatever you write that I ask you, you want to say that. That's what you write, you know? When you say, okay, I mean, this what we were told and and who told you that? Yeah, that's who told you that. This is exciting. This is exciting. This is how you want to, this is how researchers do research to find out things. Okay. So you're doing anthropology. That's what you're doing now is anthropological research. Going, okay, to delve. You're not reading any book, maybe you can read a book to guide your research. How do you do research around finding information about a particular people based on the people? Okay, so this is what you call what you call ethnographic research. I am asking you to do. So when you do Caribbean thought is interdisciplinary. You're doing sociology, yes. You're doing religion and theology. You're doing apologetics in a sense. You are doing post-colonialism, Pan-Africanism, economics, sociology. Okay, and I'm a student of interdisciplinary studies, just so you know. And I love interdisciplinary study. I think it's the way of the future. Okay, we are dynamic people. So, and I love your response, you know, because we are such a verbose people. We write, we talk well, but when we're ready to write, but I love what you just said. What you said was very academic, was very beautiful. I want to read that. I want to have conversations in your papers. What you said was powerful. You want to write that when you write, Dane. What you just said to me, you want to write it real quick. Write it down real quick. The way how you said it, the word for word. Okay, and you develop that into a book. That's how you write. Okay, I love how you talk. I love how you write. That's how you write. That's how you think. That's how you. I love that. That's what I was looking for. You can talk to people. You know. Tell me what you know, but then and tell me based on people you can find, and what you know from what people say and rumor or whatever other oral tradition, whatever. Yeah. And can I tell you, Dane? That's what I was told. It was not until recently. So that is why this is so powerful.
Exactly.
This is powerful. And guess what? We are part of this. We are among the first people in Jamaica. Just so you know, this class and Jamaica Theological Seminary, we're going to have these people presenting at our seminary. Okay, they're going to present their findings and their research and so on and so forth. I'm looking forward to this, and I'm going to invite members of the media to come and I'll share this link to the members of the media because this is a powerful theory, and we're academics. You want to eat this up. Okay, but we're gonna take a quick break. So, but that's what I thought. I thought that Dane, trust me. But no, we're being challenged. But we take a quick break. We come back at 9 o'clock.
So come back at 5 past, right? We're getting a
5 past.
Right.
If we come, guys, last week you guys just left the class. And they're talking. I didn't even know. When I look, I see only 4 people. Listen, guys, I want you guys to show me that courtesy. If you guys can't stay beyond 9, in fact, don't even text me. Just raise your hand and say, sir, I have to go. Okay, because I have XYZ. And then, or can I talk with you about me being okay? But I was talking and then people just disappeared and I only saw 4 or 6 people. Let me know that you have to leave the class. This class is going to go beyond 9 o'clock today. I need you guys to give me at least 15 minutes, okay, to wrap up the class, especially when we start late. We start 30 minutes after the class, and you guys want to leave at 9. Come on now. Okay, I prepare a beautiful lecture. Let me tell you, I delve into this. Okay, I delve into this to ensure you guys have a great experience. Please give me at least, it's 8:56 here in the US. Give me until 9:15 your time to wrap up. And if you have to go, please let me know. All right. This class, there is some input, a PowerPoint presentation that I prepared, which I'm reading from. I want to finish at least 15 of the slides, and then we can go. But I did it in a slide form, so I would like to present that on critical thinking, so we will take a break now. When we come back, we spend 10 minutes to answer the question quickly, and then I do the presentation on critical thinking. So let's come back at 9:10. We come back at 9:10. And can people afford that? The question is, where is the will to prop up? And so the question is, where is the will to prop up another country so that their people no longer need to travel or to migrate? Where is the will to prop up another country so that that country people, the country, their people will no longer need to travel or migrate? For in effect, to do so, to make Jamaica like, say, a Singapore, whose people enjoy the benefits of high growth, export, and incomes, would then mean that Jamaica becomes a more viable and competitive economy, who will then become part of the competition. So then, this put any strategy to fix immigration by working with another country in perspective. Therefore, if Biden's strategy to fix immigration is to provide assistance to these countries whose poor peoples are coming to the US illegally, would mean creating another situation where such a country like Jamaica becomes too competitive. Unless the fix is to provide aid that continues dependency. Provide aid. Unless the fix, the solution, the resolve is to provide aid, which has always been the case, aid that continues dependency. Further, immigration had always followed a draconian policy. Notice I said this. Immigration had always followed a draconian policy based on race. So there is another side of this issue. Of course, when we talk about brain drain could be a disadvantage, a consequence of immigration. Brain drain. But it could be a problem or it could be a benefit. And I talk about that in the book Neoliberalism. And if you look at how brain drain has benefited countries of the global south, then you probably might want to think twice when you connect and link up brain drain with remittances and how remittances provide the GDP in many of the global south countries, and how an important factor that is when you think about GDP. There is, however, immigration, there's another side we have to think about. I am saying to you that immigration had always followed a draconian policy, which is why we see the people who normally migrate or immigrate illegally, say for example, would take the risk as to travel to Panama and other countries and take the journey that they would, and the lengths that it would take them to travel and to come to a first world country. It is because immigration had always followed a draconian. When you look at the people who travel or migrate illegally from the global south into the global north, and those who use Mexico and who go at people the possibility of work. And I said, to answer this question critically or to critique, okay, we're not only skeptics from the looking. We would probably, you could actually go to the which helped to maintain, was never built to facilitate AI. Today, this society was never built to facilitate challenge. We make it, we would probably, you could actually go to the to Twitter. This society was never built to facilitate AI. Since we moved away from the barter or exchange system to currency, which helped to maintain and extend privilege and power in the development of human civilization, the invention of Welcome back, guys. I was actually sharing a video and I realized that you guys didn't even get the beginning of the video. The mic was on mute and but I was able to play the other half of it. I will share that. That is I have some lectures that I have done that I posted up. So you guys can go to the podcast or to the YouTube videos and see some past lectures. Excuse me. That was a lecture that I did last month. I think the last Caribbean Thought class. That was a lecture that I did, and I'm gonna share it with you for one of the classes coming up. You can go on there and listen to it. It's Caribbean Thought 13. It's available. You can go to theneoliberal.com and go to anchor.fm, and there are different ways you can listen to it, but you might find it quite powerful and interesting. Now, just so you know, I mentioned some stuff about Paul Prescott in terms of how C.L.R. James and racial hierarchy in cricket, and racial hierarchy in cricket never ended until the 1980s or something of the sort, or the 90s. We never had a black captain for a long time in Caribbean cricket. It's you couldn't have anybody. You can be black and play cricket, but you can't be black and be a captain and be a leader. Okay, because of of course, if you're black, you can't lead. Okay, but there is an article which I will share with this class that speaks to how C.L.R. James helped to end the racial hierarchy in cricket. And there's some other articles that I will share from Jacobin for you. I also want to touch on the issue of artificial intelligence. What does that mean for the Caribbean and the world? And as I said, as Caribbean thinkers and within Caribbean thought, we're not just talking about Caribbean issues and our place in the world. But yes, if we are talking about our place in the world is not just only to receive. We're not just thermometers, we're thermostats. Okay, we are also people who contribute to thinking and to academic and to thought, to academia and to thought. So we want to write about what's going on in society. Not only that, we want our government and our leaders to develop ideas and concepts and thinking around what's going on in the 21st century and for the future. So I want to talk about artificial intelligence. What does that mean for the Caribbean man? Okay, because we talk about artificial intelligence seems to be an AI seems to be an apocalyptic idea. It's the end of society or the end of how we think about society. What does that mean for the Caribbean? Okay, but I mean, in terms of our use of the technology, we know that my nephew and I, we have a company where we build websites and he uses Chat GPT. I'm like, oh, you have Chat GPT in Jamaica? That's good. Chat GPT is really good. There's another topic I want to add. Who rules the world? Who rules the world? A very important topic I want to talk about. Who rules the world? We'll say more about that. And that's where I'll stop. Now, 5 minutes. Question. Just before we took the break, I had asked you guys some questions about your heritage and your lineage. I asked the question, what is your heritage? What is your lineage? How far back can you go to find your roots? What sources do you have? Do you have any Indians? Do you have Indians in your family or people of any or Indian roots? Or do you have any, can you trace your heritage back to an Indian heritage? If not, why not? If you can, how so? I want to know. And by the way, Dane talked about Maroons, and they were dark skinned. A lot of the Maroons are dark skinned, but not all of them are. You might find one or two Maroons that's not. But you also have my grandmother, my mom's side. I understand she was Maroon, and but nice hair. They have very nice hair in a sense. I mean, they use the hair to adjudicate sometimes. Nice. You know what? I should not say nice hair. I apologize. That I should not use the word. They have a certain kind of hair. A certain kind of hair. And so which does not necessarily resemble what African hair look like. You know what I mean? And of course, is that a result of an Indian heritage? Now they have doing studies where you can trace bloodlines, and some of the genealogical studies I understand there was one study that taken them to court, or they sued. There was a lawsuit against this genealogical study where they were lying. So I'm not sure about that. So that's something to think about. But tell me, questions, you guys. Anybody wants to take a couple of you? Let me hear the responses. What's your heritage? What's your lineage? How far back can you go, and what are the sources? Do you have any Indian heritage in your family?
Sir.
Easy, yes.
Sir, you hear me, sir?
Loud and clear.
Okay, I just want to talk a little about mine.
Yes.
All right. So I had mentioned in my submission that my pattern, I'm starting from my grandparents. Well, for my paternal grandparents, then I don't know them because sorry, my father is from Clarendon. He and two other brothers migrated to St. Thomas and settled and started their families here. But we have no known history of them. All right. But for my mother's father is from the lineage of slave masters. I was told that my grandfather's mother, an in-house slave, and she had 3 children for the slave master. So my grandfather is half white then.
Wow.
And he has like about 5, 6 children, and the 2 of them had inherited that, while the other 4 got nice ear, or let me not say nice ear, hear from those people. You understand? But only 2.
Sorry, Susie, let us see. They want to see you, Susie.
Oh, everybody knows Susie. So everybody knows Susie.
Let's see your face.
Only you want to know me.
No, everybody don't know you. Some people don't know. Let's see your face.
So I don't know for them people. Let me tell you that. Okay.
All right, yeah, man.
So as I said, from my grandfather's 6 children, 2 of them they inherited the white skin and the kind of hair, but the rest they are dark skin because my grandmother is dark skin.
Yes.
All right, but you know what I see happening, sir?
Tell me, what did you discover?
I have cousins who got their children with black men, and guess what? The children are hazel eyes and just milk.
Okay.
So they actually got that from way back there. I don't know how comes, but mother and father are dark, and they got my grandfather's complexion and eye color as well.
Okay, when they talk about bloodline as against skin complexion, when you do genealogical research, you go beyond the bloodline, you go beyond the skin and start because you have recessive genes, and you have dominant genes, and the way how they recessive as against the dominant genes work is quite interesting because you can have the first to the third child look like the dad, and then the 4th child look like another generation. Okay, because the recessive gene may not show up, but for some reason, one child, you may have the recessive gene might show up in the 4th child or in the next generation, whatever. Yes, go ahead.
All right, so you see my cousin now who has these children, one of my cousins who has these children, she's dark-skinned, but her eyes are the hazel eyes of my grandfather. And her children now, they have the milk skin and the eyes as well to match my grandfather. And as I said,
have you done a trace of that family of that?
Well, that is the thing, sir. Listen here. those 3 children that my great grandmother had for that slave master, they are named Louise. But I don't know for sure that that man was Louis. Maybe he just gave them a name.
Now, let me ask you a question. Okay, so do you know how did that house slave, that your great relative, how did that that was a house slave, or
yes, she was.
How do you know that?
Because remember now, my grandfather actually grew up in that house as well as children. He and his brother and his sister, they actually grew up there in the house as well.
Okay, good. Quite interesting, quite powerful. Do you think you have any Indian heritage in your family?
Oh, not that I know of. Not that I know of.
So what you know is that you definitely have African heritage and some plantocracy.
But you know something, sir, I think, when I have my next children, they might get some of that complexion here as well. I'm just waiting until after graduation to see how it works
out. Okay. All right. And please it should be good to do a family tree to trace that to get your heritage. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else?
Yes, sir.
Sasha, I see you wanted to talk earlier.
Sarah was just troubling Susie, telling her Dane wanted to see her pretty ear.
Oh, okay, that's good.
For me,
all right, Sasha. Yes, you're on the floor, Sasha. Tell me about your heritage.
Sir, the information is hard to get because from what I'm hearing from my aunts, my died. So my patron, my great grandparents. From the little that I heard, my great grandmother, she was not a Jamaican. She was from Cuba, but she never speak the language around the kids, or if she's going to speak it, she normally dismiss them from around her. And that's it. They're not giving me much info.
Well, okay, so she was from Cuba. Do you know what kind of race or ethnicity? Was she an African in Cuba, or what is her heritage in Cuba?
She's dark complexion, light hair, light curly hair.
So she's not from Jamaica at all. She's from Cuba. I noticed there was a lot of travel between Jamaica and Cuba. My great grandfather was born in Cuba, McKenzie. And I think some of the Thomases are related to the McKenzies. But my great grandfather was born in Cuba, but I heard that he's from Scotland. My great grandfather is from Scotland, and he went to Cuba, and that's where he met this is on my father's side. This is when he met that's when he met my great grandmother. My great grandmother was from Jamaica, but she traveled, but she went to Cuba, and that's where she met the Scotland man. That's what I was told. Okay. Now, what happened before this woman met this Cuban? I mean, before the Scottish, I don't know. I don't know what happened. No one can tell me. They don't know anything else because, as usual, we don't do a very good job in tracing our history and protecting and keeping our heritage. We don't do a very good job. So other people do it for us. Okay, other people. So nothing is, I don't know anything beyond that. On my mom's side, however, I'm being told that my grandmother her great grandfather was mixed with some maroon, but my mom's mom had some kind of Irish. But there might be some kind of urban Indian heritage somewhere down the line. I don't know. Okay, but it's quite interesting. Anybody else? Excuse me. Anybody else? No one? That's it? Okay. You guys, I'll read your papers I'll read the papers that you submit. Now, as we're gonna wrap up class with 15 minutes of this presentation, 5 minutes, and then we'll just quickly go over the last part, the expectations for class towards the end. But I want to share, I'm going to share with you, I'm going to finish sharing the presentation for today. So good, let me go back to that and let me bring this up. This is a very important topic which I am about to do with, oops, no. Okay, good. All right, so now let's, from current slide. Okay, so we were looking at some questions and important themes. By the way, what is Caribbean and what is the socio-economic context of the Caribbean? We said that the Caribbean is an invention of the 20th century. I mean, where is the Caribbean and are the people and are Caribbean people America? Oh, American. By the way, I forgot you guys didn't answer that question. Are the Caribbean people Americans? And I'm going to say, yes, they're Americans. We are part of the Americans. I actually answered that question already. Are we Americans? Yes, we are Americans. Caribbean, we are part of the Caribbean. We are part of the Americas, the American continent. And if you look at how the world is in terms of land mass and those and the extending islands or extending masses, you know, whenever you have you look at an island, and you look at a mainland or a continent, the mainland, there's always some kind of little offshoot, as if someone threw a dart, splash something, and it goes all over the place. There's some breaks, so you have some break with the water broke. So there are some breaks with the water. God was creating the world, and he did a splash, but there were some breaks. The breaks that create some little offshoots. The islands are part. So we are part of the American. We extend from the American mainland, but we are part of the Americas and the American experience. Okay, we're part of the American experience. So I said, so yes, we are part of the American experience, especially from the 1960s. Oh, sorry, from Christopher Columbus until now, and even before that, there is still that part, that something that connects the people and the place in this region that is special and unique from any other place. What is critical thinking and how is it important to the study of Caribbean thought? That is what the presentation is about today. As we conceptualize the course Caribbean thought, we think about Caribbean as a place. We think as Caribbean as with a people and with challenges, but we talk about looking at things from history from a subaltern view, looking at history from below. We are able to do that because we are able to do that, or we are doing that. When we do that, we're doing critical thinking. So Caribbean thought involves critical analysis. It involves doing critical analysis. So the question is, what is critical thinking and how is it important to the study of Caribbean thought? And finally, do we have any urban Indian heritages in the Caribbean? So if I were to ask you that question, all of you would say, no, we don't know of anything. I don't know. I can't point to any Indian heritage, urban Indian heritage. Probably East Indian, but I can point to Maroons. Whether or not there was some kind of interaction, I can't point to that. So I'm looking forward with a bated breath to hear what they have to say on Monday. But do we have any urban Indian heritage in the Caribbean? We'll wait until next week to have a dialogue, to hear the presentation. And then we can probably do some more research within our family and probably do some bloodline research. Now, the question of critical thinking is important, but by the way, important as it relates to the important themes, topics, and contributors to Caribbean thinking. We talk about misclassified urban Indians. Then we talk about the issue of dependent capitalism. What is dependent capitalism? I talk about that in the book Neoliberalism. I'll talk about that later on in the course. Democratic socialism, which is a political ideology, which was a dominant political ideology, especially from that dominated countries of the global south, especially in the Caribbean, Jamaica, and so on, in the 1940s, 50s, because many people thought that democratic socialism was a kind of political ideology that seemed to provide the kind of way out for them. That was the best political system that created that was based on the masses of people. Okay, it was based on equality, and of course, you're talking about people who are discriminated against, people there who are experience inequality and poverty, and who are treated as property within a particular system that promotes equity and capitalism. Okay, but so capitalism didn't provide any hope or benefit for people. So many of the people in the Caribbean and the global South, or of course, they gravitated towards socialism. And of course, Keith and Novella Nelson in their book talks about democratic socialism. I'm going to get to Maxine right after this. There's also neoliberal globalization and the issue of neoliberal globalization. What is neoliberal globalization? We attach neoliberal with globalization. Globalization is where goods and services and its products, where goods and services cross borders, countries or society. In its raw sense, globalization involves that. Globalization is the making of the world within as a village. And we talk about neoliberal is the strategy behind that facilitates globalization. The kind of strategy behind the global that defined the 1980s and 90s and 2000s. The kind of globalization that defined it was a strategy that we call neoliberal, a bureaucratic phenomenon that we will define later on. We talk about the contributors Franz Fanon and Homi Bhabha. We thought Franz Fanon, right, was in a sense was famous for combining post-colonialism and looking at the colonial man and combining it within a psychoanalytic theory. So he was kind of profound. He was very profound using psychoanalysis and the Sigmund and Freudian theory and then looking at the empowered man and looking at the colonized man within a psychoanalytic frame. Okay, so he was famous for that, but he was also seen as an activist, as a radicalist. In fact, his books were banned at one point, but that's Franz Fanon, and he was very influential in many people of the global South. Homi Bhabha, another literarian, she wrote the book The Location of Culture, and in fact, she was one of the theorists who have spent a lot of time analyzing past theorists and diverse currents that have helped to shape the global South or the post-colonial man. Bob Marley, in Who Shot the Sheriff, and how influential a figure he was in terms of the music, which has helped to transform Caribbean society or Jamaica and put Jamaica on the world stage, in a sense, made Jamaica but yet still many Jamaicans, while they accept Bob Marley, many Jamaicans don't embrace him because he is seen as a Rasta promoting religious. And of course, you talk about the dominant political ideology within Jamaica. Okay, it is one that is married with the capitalist, this capitalist viewpoint. But Bob Marley said in one of his famous quotes, "We're not Marxist or capitalist, we are Rasta." And many Jamaicans, no, we're not Rastafarian. Most of us are Christians. We are Christians, and my mom didn't like Rastafarians. She didn't like people with dreadlocks, and and even many conservative Christians and Orthodox and Pentecostals, and many Christians and many people who promote this kind of bourgeois Britishness. Okay, where they eschew people like the Rastafarians and the Bob Marleys of the world. They thought they were weird and part of the hippie culture, or whatever the case might be, the fringes of society. So many within Jamaica, how some people in Jamaica view Jamaica. I mean, how people talk about Bob Marley. They talk about him in one way, but then you go outside, you go elsewhere, they talk about him, or they fully embrace Bob Marley. Oh, Bob Marley. You'll never believe that they play reggae music, Bob Marley music when they go outside. Maybe they're trying to fit, they want to develop relevance. Maybe they're trying to fit within the mold of how they're seen. But they are seen in the eyes of Bob Marley because Bob Marley was from Jamaica, and he in a sense brought his culture and his ideologies and promoted a particular ideology, brought Jamaica on the map and Jamaica, and and of course Jamaica, and by the way, today I was watching an American station, TV, and they were talking about reggae music and how reggae music is changing, and people would tell you reggae music led to dancehall music, which led to rap music. But Jamaicans don't benefit from reggae music as much as they should, and dancehall music, or maybe because it's not as organized. Okay, so that we don't make as much money, we don't benefit from it in a very unique and a very organized way. But Bob Marley was very instrumental in developing this kind of religious, promoting Rastafarianism, promoting our music and our dance and our culture, and and the language, how he talks. They like the Jamaican language and how Jamaicans speak and vocalize in a sense. But anyway, he was very instrumental. But one of his most important, but his contributions to political ideology, this view of oneness, and he talks about this religious consciousness moving away from. He said we're not. When Bob Marley said we're not Marxists and we're not capitalists with Rastas, he was using literary device. He was speaking in such poetic ways. He's saying that anyway, we're not looking to some external political ideology. We're not looking to Marxist, or we're not looking to. We are looking to something else, something deeper that comes from within and from without. That is external. That is something that is divine and something that is within, in a sense. We're not turning to capitalism because capitalism has failed us. We're not turning to socialism because socialism has failed us, in a sense. He's looking to something more religious, and his religion was not based in historical religion. It wasn't based in Christianity. He wanted to move away from Christianity because Christianity, to many Rastas and many people in the Black movement, was tainted. Was one of the reasons why helped to promote the suffering of the Black people. Okay, they didn't look to, and Christianity helped to promote privilege of the white man and the kind of images in terms of the worship and so on that it utilized, how worship is done and so on, to continue to promote white privilege. So many people, they move away from that to make religion and their worship, and Jamaicans and Bob Marley was very unique to creating a religion and religious ideology. Not many new Caribbean societies is famous for that. Okay, and even today you have many Rastas throughout the world because of Bob Marley, but he didn't create Rastafarianism. Now there's also Louise Bennet and her poetics, quite powerful, and the way how she used language and how she in a sense she popularized. She did what V.S. Naipaul did. She did what who else did this? But what Franz Fanon was doing. In a sense, it was a violent break from the standards. When we talk about violence, we're saying that violence is the opium of the oppressed man. When people say, "Oh, we don't want violence," but you can't only think about violence in a physical way. In other words, destroying edifices and so on, but also language. In other words, when you depart from the norm, from the status quo, okay, that is also a violent break from how people speak. Sometimes, some people, say for example, I never used to I never have a deeper appreciation. I started to study hood life in America, in a sense, or not hood life, but Black culture or African American communities, and how some of the boys would carry themselves and so on. Like the word nigger, and they embrace the word nigger, and they live a certain way. They have their pants below their buttocks, and they carry themselves in a way that's not British or not professional. You know what? Because they are moving away. In other words, it's a violent break from society. It is their way. It is their strategy. It is their form. It is their method. It is their violence from a system, from a Babylonian quote unquote system. Babylon is, when we talk about Babylon, we're not necessarily talking about Babylon. It's just it's a figurative term that they're giving to the system that control, to status quo, to the dominant class, or the system that we find ourselves. Okay, so Bob Marley wanted to. Christianity was promoted this kind of Western religious system that promoted that continued white supremacy, and they moved away from that. And we talk about the ideological basis behind capitalism was also part of it was religious. Talk about this the Protestant ethic. The Protestant ethic was part of the ethic that was contained within capitalism, the hard work and so on. And so, of course, an understanding of that would then move you to not want to identify with such a draconian and callous religion. So now they want to them creating, and of course, they were suspicious of, anyway, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. So Louise Bennet was she, of course, if you can't speak English very well, you're looked down upon, because of course when you talk about the socio-economic context of Jamaica, we talk about Jamaica is based on on class. It's a class system, and part of it is racial, part of it is your education, and also part of it is your ability to speak, to grasp English. Okay, you are seen in a different light when you have a certain control of the English language, when you have a certain ease of the English language. Okay, when you're able to speak it in a certain way. Okay, so of course, but Louise and patois was not included as part of the standards. The whole reason, in fact, the issue of Creole as against language. Creole is a creation of a system that privileged European language over Caribbean and post-colonial speakers. And patois and other that. Okay, so the dialects of these African, the languages that most Caribbean and African people speak, and it is considered a dialect or a Creole, not a language. Why is this so? As against French, English, and so on, those are languages. Is it the same as we continue in our minds this discrimination by accepting certain things? Okay, so why is it that we cannot write in patois? It's difficult to write patois, they say, but probably that's an argument from convenience. But Louise Bennet has showed us how we can speak the Jamaican language. And when I say Jamaican language, I'm not talking English. Okay, English is borrowed language. We can speak Jamaica. This is how something that is unique to Jamaica dancehall and reggae music and the Rastafari movement, and probably they say Obia. Okay, but something that is unique is the patois, Jamaican patois. That is our language that we talk, so we speak. Okay, but people look down upon it, even when you're in a class in a university, them look down upon it. Okay, I deliberately. Okay, but when you study cultures and some of how people present themselves, and they will call it ragamuffin or the Don man or the whatever the words that is used to describe people in community who break from the standards. Louise Bennet championed that break from standard, using promoting in her literary genius language, the Jamaican dialect, and put it in the center stage. That is violence. When Franz Fanon says the Negro is not any more than the white man, he is not using subject-verb agreement in that sentence deliberately, okay, to show, okay, because he's using a violent way to lift up something that's never usually lifted up, okay? Rex Nettleford talks about the issue of identity, okay? And we're going to talk about Rex Nettleford, talk about the Jamaican dance movement, very instrumental in creating the Jamaican dance movement and contributed to academia in terms of the issue of identity. The issue of identity, and him writing about identity is important because, you know, his whole issue of the LGBT community, okay? And Rex Nettleford as a Jamaican and how Jamaicans are predisposed when we talk about the issue of identity and the masculine, the issue of sexuality, sexual identity. Or by the way, I should have added the Herflow Foundation and period poverty, because say, for example, the challenge of ending period poverty was the challenge of period of trying to deal with period poverty in Jamaica by Shelley Fraser and Shelley and Meeks and the Weeks and the Herflow Foundation in Jamaica. The problem, and I interviewed her for a show that we did. The problem that they had was the church and the masculine stance that people have. And so, of course, so we have to talk about that, the issue of sexual identity and how also our theology and our philosophy plays a role in that. Of course, Stephanie Black and Jamaica Kincaid. This movie, the film Life and Death, is a very important film. Life and Death, powerful. We're going to show that film. That film is quite powerful, quite vital to the class as we start to look at, especially how structural adjustment has affected Jamaica. The Life and Death looks, and in a sense, it looks at immigration, but not immigration in the way how we see it. And it looks at the issue of escape. Who gets to escape the realities of Jamaica as against who don't? Looks at how, in other words, and the audience, when you look at Life and Death, it was created for people who are on the outside. It's telling a story to the people who only see Jamaica in terms of as a paradise. But then when you study Jamaica, you look at who is doing the working and who is enjoying the beaches, who is at the hotels enjoying, and who is always serving. So it shows the dynamic. It juxtaposes that. When you study film, you look at juxtaposition. Okay, every time it shows the local, they're always working and serving. And in the film and in the documentary film, it switches back to the foreigner, to the tourist. The tourist is always from Europe or Anglo-Saxon or former master for the majority, and the tourist is always enjoying the beauty. And the tourist comes on from a plane and then leaves on the plane, and then of course they don't know, and they are in paradise, enjoying paradise, and then it shows, and the film shows what's going on with internal Jamaica JLP versus PNP, the violence, the IMF, okay, the agricultural problem, and so on and so forth. They don't talk about bauxite, but I'm going to talk about bauxite later on. That shows how we have squandered the opportunity, how Caribbean have squandered its opportunities. Okay, so they talk about Stephanie Black is a feminist, and we talk about the feminist movement, and we're going to talk about feminism in one of the classes we have. Feminists who are very important thinkers to Jamaica. So we're going to talk about C.L.R. James, Norman Girman, Walter Rodney, V.S. Naipaul, Ramesh Sarwan, Castro, Manley, Seaga, and Bishop from Grenada. Now, and finally, inequality, poverty, and penetration. Those some of the topics you would maybe talk about. Nationalism, that's important, but income inequality and poverty. We're going to study that. We talk about Caribbean, we talk about dependency. Talk about penetration. I said that earlier. The issue of penetration is important when you study power. And studying power, you have to look at the dynamics between the Caribbean, the global south, and the global north. The issue of penetration. Who is doing the penetration? The penetrating. Who is doing most of the penetrating? Okay, and that will determine the position, one's position, our theology as well, and the issue of technology, talking about artificial intelligence and our opportunities. Okay. Now, critical thinking. Explore what is critical thinking. I asked the question earlier, what is critical thinking? And if I were to ask you that, and I don't have time for that. I only have about a few minutes to wrap up the class, and I will wrap up in a few minutes. I'm going to try and wrap it up quickly. But what is critical thinking? And hold on, let me what is critical thinking? Exploring thought and position, unveiling new discoveries for effective progress. So the topic is critical thinking, exploring thought and position, unveiling new discoveries for effective progress. Oh, 9:51. I have 9 minutes to wrap up. So I'm going to run through this quickly, and then we are going to wrap up from here. Okay. So let me go back to this here. I think I will only need 9 minutes to present. So that's fine. I'm trying to find, okay, there we go. There we go. Okay. So we asked the question. So the question we are asking is, what is critical thinking? And let me share my screen. And I'm going to share this. this. I'm sorry. I'm having a problem. I don't want to go that far. Stop video. Okay. All right, great. Let me do this. Sorry about that. I am missing my notes. I'm trying to find my notes. Let me try to find it here. 1 second, guys. Let me go back to share my screen. Yeah, I'm sharing. Okay, there we go. And share screen. All right, and now let's go from current slide. Good. Now, what is critical thinking? So we're going to define critical thinking. When we define critical thinking, I'm sorry, I have a safety message. Sorry, but I have a malware that something was trying to infect my computer just now. I'm sorry about that. Hold up, I'm fixing it now. Something is trying to go on my computer. I have a safety warning. Hold on just 1 second. Here we go. Okay, critical thinking. When we talk about critical thinking, what are we talking about? One, critical thinking. Critical thinking is thinking about thinking and evaluating current and past thoughts. It is thinking about thinking and evaluating current and past thoughts. In its simplistic and basic definition, it is thinking about thinking and what was previously or is the current thought that builds on or debunks information that leads to new discoveries of thought and positions that improves life. It is deliberately and intentionally reflecting on truths, challenging oneself, whether through introspective discourse or engagement with others. It highlights the importance of reflection, challenging truth, and engaging with others. Critical thinking deconstructs reality. And I'm going to emphasize the deconstruction of reality and the pursuit of progress through critical thinking. So we're the deconstruction of reality. But it's the deconstruction, and by the way, I need to correct that. It's the deconstruction of reality towards the pursuit of progress through critical thinking. It deconstructs reality by scrutinizing current knowledge and truths we have about ourselves. Say, for example, the UIHS. Again, so critical is challenging truth. And the book Neoliberalism, it's part of deconstructivist philosophy and critical history. Talk about the neoliberal and Caribbean thought and what we are about on postcolonial. We're deconstructing. So Caribbean critical thinking, it deconstructs reality by scrutinizing current knowledge and truths we have about ourselves. Critical thinking is usually within the realm of the post-colonial, the postmodern skeptic, or those who are fighting for better. And we're talking about which leading to effective progress. Leading to effective progress. And it is not just philosophers. When we talk about critical thinking, it's not just philosophers or academics who must think critically about all things so as to ascertain truth, but those whose understanding of life is shaped by tainted narratives that are monopolized or controlled by the subjective, the external subjective, those things that are outside of themselves or ourselves, but it is still within the subjective, but it's been passed off as an objective, as something that is divine. However, we cannot escape the subjective, as this is how we make sense of our reality based on what we learned from Descartes in his phenomenology, Descartes. That leads to his reality within the totality of what is true and how we may come to affirm that truth, or the truth of that reality, or the truth of reality. Because for Descartes discusses his famous quote, "Cogito ergo sum." Descartes' famous quote, "Cogito ergo sum," I think, therefore I am, which is an exploration of existence and the role of the mind in affirming reality. But whose mind? In our mind, nobody else's. Only you know. You cannot know anything for true, for real, out without external verification of the person projecting that reality. The only thing you can know for certain is that it is within your own self and within your own mind, according to Descartes. Because Descartes started from the point of view when he tried to understand all things. He said, how can I know if whether or not anything exists? Okay, I'm going to start from saying nothing exists. But wait, somebody is thinking that. Who is thinking that nothing exists? My mind. So therefore, my mind, my thinking mind exists. And therefore, I think, therefore I am. He had written cogito ergo sum, meaning I think, therefore I am. And Descartes was ambivalent and perplexed about the reality of existence and sought to abandon all things and start afresh from nothing, but discovered the difficulty of doing so, as he cannot deny that something is thinking from the start to do what he is setting out to do. So he concluded that the thing that is thinking is the mind, and therefore one cannot deny its very existence. However, his proof of existence does not go beyond one's own reality. For then one cannot then come to understand any existence outside of one's own mind and reality. Therefore, it behoves us to engage in relationships facilitated by communication, which then spurs the dynamic of life. So if we were to think about the critical thinkers like Michel Foucault and Immanuel Kant, Michel Foucault and Immanuel Kant are very important critical thinkers. They aren't born for critical thinking, because critical thinking is a skill and a vocation that is developed over time. Critical thinkers are iconoclasts, image breakers, who, like Herodotus, Thucydides, Sappho Pindar, and like Socrates, Plato and Aristotle challenged current reflections of past knowledge of the day, for they had departed from Homer's Iliad, and Homer wrote the book Iliad. If you guys study Greek mythology, the Iliad, if you know about Olympus and the Greeks and the gods, if you guys, and by the way, if you guys get a chance to read that, please do. It's very important for you to read that. I didn't read anything about Greek mythology until I got here to the US. And then I realized, why were we not exposed to Greek mythology in the way that we should have been? It's a very important part of literature when you start thinking about the foundations of knowledge. They had, and then by the way, when we talk about Michel Foucault, Michel Foucault is the most cited researcher across all fields. He was born in 1926, he died in 1984. He was a French philosopher who called his project a critical history of thought. A critical history of thought. Since 1998, Foucault has been providing free access to large selections of about the discourse on truth, and you can learn about Foucault. But Foucault has done quite a lot of research around thinking and about institutionalism. And his critical thought, Michel Foucault, according to the extent that Foucault fits into the philosophical tradition, it is the critical tradition of Kant, Immanuel Kant, and his project. And when you think about the critical history of thought, it is an analysis of the conditions under which certain relations of subject to object are formed or modified, insofar as those relationships constitute a possible knowledge. So Michel Foucault talked about how institutions form part of what ensures a particular kind of knowledge that maintains privilege. And the knowledge is not necessarily created by anything by the divine, but it is influenced by human. We will talk some more about Michel Foucault as the class goes on. I mean, throughout the course. We're going to 5 minutes and I'll wrap up and I'm done because I won't be able to finish this. So we talk about image breakers. I said to you just now that it behoves us to engage in relationships facilitated by communication, which then spurs the dynamic of life. And Immanuel Kant and Michel Foucault, they are critical thinkers. And these critical thinkers, they aren't born for critical thinking. Critical thinking is a skill and a vocation that is developed over time. Critical thinkers are what is known as iconoclasts. And who are iconoclasts? They are image breakers, like Herodotus and Thucydides. We'll talk about these later on. Aristotle challenged current reflections of past knowledge of the day. That's what they did. Say, for example, we learn of Jesus, we learn of Achilles being the warrior king, but then there's a break talking about why was there a war between the Greeks, between the Greeks and the Syrians? Why was there when you study the Iliad, they talk about this war. Why was there a war? And he said, oh, because it involves the theft of a woman. A woman was involved and there was some stealing. And so they wanted to take back their pride, and so there was a war over this woman. Of course, we learned it wasn't about that, it was about something else, Herodotus wrote. So the foundations of most major religions today stem from a break of a tradition. The foundations of most major religions today stemmed from a break of a tradition such as Reform and Reformation of the Dark Ages, leading to the period of Enlightenment and free thinking. And this led to inventions and innovations. And the Protestant Church, who had broken ties with the Catholic Church, especially on the basis that all men, and not just the Pope or the privileged, had access to God. This allowed for the official translation of scriptures in a common tongue. Nevertheless, the ability to read the sacred writings in a particular language was given greater credence for those who had such training or exposure so as to maintain certain privilege over thought. Socrates with his Socratic school of thought, Machiavelli and his Machian society, Aristotle and his new epistemology leading to various branches of modern thought that created a civil society based on rules and laws, but guided by the principles of institutional religion and science. In fact, science today is doing what religion did yesterday, privileging itself. In fact, Gramsci, in his Prison Notebook, he wrote the book Prison Notebook, examines the privilege of thought within intellectualism, which he, like Michel Foucault and other post-structuralist and postmodernist thinkers, had derided as a form of institutionalism that portends the privilege in society. Now, such is the tension in our created societies that give rise to the dynamics in society between race and classes, which is themselves, in themselves, are said to be created spaces for the dominant towards a particular constant. And just so you know, Karl Marx had challenged the economic history of society. Karl Marx had challenged the economic history of society concerning the accumulation of wealth within societies of equal beings without class, status, society. And he reimagined a utopic society of equal beings without class. That's Karl Marx. Without class, he imagined a society, a utopia, without class, society. Plato could not imagine a society without class, but Karl Marx imagined a society without class. Some people believe that you cannot have a society without class. It's just normal. But Karl Marx says we can have a society without class, without status or kin, which differs from Plato's Republic and the Aristotelian view, which one may argue occupy much of the Western and to a lesser degree Eastern. Yet the East is suspicious of the West, and the West is suspicious of the East, as Ian Baruma had explained in Orientalism, a book. It's called Orientalism, a book that explores ethnocentrism. To do critical thinking is to do analysis. And we said critical thinking, and I said that earlier, to do critical thinking is to do analysis. It is looking at things in a metaphysical way. It dissects and does surgery. It is a way of thinking that looks at patterns in action and explores thoughts. It does psychoanalysis, which is what Franz Fanon did in Black Skin, White Mask. If you read that, if you get that book, somebody shared a copy of it in the WhatsApp group. Okay, and we're gonna talk some more about this. But it does psychoanalysis. Sigmund Freud talked about psychoanalysis, digging deep within oneself and within one mind, which Karl Marx and later Franz Fanon used to present the empowered self. In fact, Franz Fanon writes that the Negro is not any more than the white man in Black Skin, White Mask, represents an empowered depiction of the Black man from an unusually neutral approach that is not a top-down approach. This pragmatically and succinctly critical thinking at work. When he says the Negro is not, this is a pragmatic and a succinct understanding of critical thinking at work, where he who is angry, we who are angry at our colonial, at Well, he is here angry at his colonial masters in his ill state, because when he wrote Wretched of the Earth, he was not well. He was ill and trying to find some kind of cure. He is angry at the colonial master and at the world in his ill state, which does not justify man through a binary. He doesn't justify his approach to dealing with man critically is not to justify man through a binary that puts him in jeopardy of his self outside of no other. He doesn't say that the black man is not less than. Instead, he writes that the black man is not more than, which challenges the usual narrative or language when comparing the post-colonial preacher with that of his former master. It is a type of thinking that was bold and dangerous in his day, which posed a threat to the status quo, which led to the banning of his books, such as Black Skin, White Mask. Homi Bhabha, the post-colonialist, was even intrigued by Fanon and V.S. Naipaul, who Bhabha explained was off-center, and I said earlier, and it was on the fringes, not part of the center or central and standard thought of the day, not part of intellectualism, due to their work in reimagining the colonial and post-colonial characters as little but talawa and unassumingly powerful with magic untold. These stories bring to life those who were at the back pages of life. This is critical thinking at work. It examines and evaluates. It examines and evaluates what is the obvious and what is obvious and what is not. What is the obvious? What is the obvious and what is not? It does not take sides. It involves having trained ears and eyes that hear and see far and wide. Critical thinking is developed through the training of the mind to think in a certain way, as it is explorative thinking. It challenges your own thinking and beliefs. It uses logic, common sense, and reason. It benefits from expansive thought and sequencing of present and past knowledge. It builds on past information. Critical thinking is coherent and clear. It follows the laws of logic and reason, but it disrupts and challenges. It is fair and open. It is sharp and cuts. It goes deep and deeper, but it's focused and direct. It is honest and understands its bias. Example, one may come to a conclusion about the Caribbean, saying that the Caribbean's inability to chart their own course since decolonization and realize real political independence and economic prosperity. And I might say, what voice do you have, or do we have as a Caribbean thinker? What are the threats to that voice? Are Caribbean countries truly free of the external and this illusion of freedom? Where does it come from? It comes within competing worldviews. What of the issue of bias? We utilize Kenneth Clark's Dark Ghetto, Dilemmas of Social Power, to help us distill some of the concepts and explore the question and our thoughts. We reference these in the book Neoliberalism when we talk about Kenneth Clark's book Dark Ghetto. We're going to talk about this later. To discuss these ideas, we delve into the issue of how identity presents an issue by looking at how things are viewed. How identity presents an issue by looking at how things are viewed. If you look at the wrong things, you get the wrong results. Because of determinations based in analysis, influenced by a brand that then led to a branded perspective. I'm going to say that again. We delve into the issue of how identity presents an issue by looking at how things are viewed because of determinations based in analysis, influenced by a brand that then leads to a branded perspective. We explore the problem of study and the issue of position and hierarchy within studies, especially between the subject and the observer. And we then begin to look at the issue of the ghetto. Therefore, the post-colonial man must be a critical thinker who is a skeptic, one who is suspicious of history and its creation of the present. For like Kant, we live in the reality of a history that is a result of human nature and circumstance. Immanuel Kant says history is a result of human nature and circumstance. That's what Immanuel Kant says. And I agree with him. And when you study Homer and when you start studying Greek mythologies and so on and so forth, you get to understand what he is pointing at. It is not from the common sense that the top of his head, Immanuel Kant is coming to that conclusion, saying that history is a result of human nature and circumstance. Because when you look at human nature and what results from human nature, what do you see? You see the production of that nature, of privileging himself over others. And that's why you have Jews for Jesus and Jews not for Jesus in the development of human history and in the Greco-Roman world. Jews for Jesus competing for dominance as against Jews not for Jesus. Human nature and the circumstances of our times. Like Kant, we live in the reality of a history that is the result of human nature and circumstance. Kant's critique of pure reason and practical knowledge, including Newtonian physics, being the foundation of knowledge about everything unchanging and categories of the mind. Immanuel Kant, he challenged this view of Newton physics, believing that there is some law that governs physics, that governs nature and society. There is no law. The law that governs physics and the law of thermodynamics is an invention. The law that governs thermodynamics is an invention by man. It's not without human intervention. Immanuel Kant challenges that. He challenges that. He challenged as dangerous any study of moral codes as foundation to any knowledge outside of the varieties of human natures. Outside of the varieties. Again, I'm going to say this again. If you get nothing from what I have said today, as it relates to critical thinking, is this, that the post-colonial man must be a critical thinker. And that Immanuel Kant challenges as dangerous any study of moral codes as foundation to any knowledge outside of the varieties of human nature. In other words, what we determine as the laws of human nature, what we determine as moral codes, doesn't come from outside of man, but it is within man. Now, does that mean that it is bad because it comes from within man? No, but we already agree that what is within man does not know anything for certain outside of himself, as advanced by Descartes. I think, therefore I am. Okay, he can only come to an assumption, and we can't know anything for certain. But what we do know is that the mind is thinking, and so therefore we can't go outside of our mind. So there are some people like Muta Baruka who believes that God is a creation. What does he mean by God is a creation? Does he mean that it is man who creates God? No, he means that man creates the interpretation about God. But an understanding of God could exist outside of a particular man, and that is why we have denominations. Because, but nothing is wrong with having denominations, but something is wrong with it because people privilege their denomination and their thinking and their perspective over another. Okay? But it is not far, when we start talking about Caribbean theology, we are going to say it is not far-fetched to see God the ultimate intervening with man based on the particular man's understanding and based on the particular man's knowledge and based on where that particular man is. And then that particular man or woman who have engaged and experienced with the divine or with some external history or reality come to a truth that was not meant to universalize that truth, but was just meant for him and the divine or from that experience. But man has gone to do, no, I say to you, when we start to study Caribbean theology, which I said to you, what is the greatest miracle? I think one of the greatest miracles is the picture of man coming together, united. But even within religion that's supposed to bring people together, there is no unity because we have a religion, we have a particular understanding of faith that divides us. Yet the picture of, but the miracle and the greatest miracle of all things, Jesus Christ died to bring us all together. We talk about that, bringing man together. But every religion have a various way of bringing about unity. And everybody privileged their way. Okay? But I believe the greatest miracle is when we can come together and live as one. That is what God intended for us. Okay, but we will never be able to do that because of the privilege that we have, which comes from human nature, that propensity to privilege. Social institutions represent traditions of knowledge steeped in hegemony and faith. Social institutions represent traditions of knowledge steeped in hegemony and privilege. Critical thinking may seem to hurt one's brain, but such thinking is left to those who are devoid of such discourse and vocation, as they are philosopher kings and queens, working to play their part and make their mark toward revolutionary improvements on the totality of life. Again, critical thinking may seem to hurt one's brain, but such is thinking. Such is thinking, but such thinking is left to those who are devoted to such discourse and vocation, as they are philosopher kings and queens, working to play their part and make their mark toward revolutionary movements on the totality of life. And that's where we stop. And next week we will begin from, well, next week we're not doing this next week. Next week the UIHS will present. And that's where we will end. Okay. Thank you for those who are still with us. I appreciate you. Maxine had her hand up publicly. I apologize. I was trying to hurry up and get through this. For some of you did not finish the homework assignment that I had given you but I think I have another homework for next week, and that is to review chapters 1 to 3 of neoliberalism, to present to interact with. I will to interact with it.
Excuse me, sir.
Go ahead, Chantal.
Some persons had left. So I only have about 6 persons in the class.
6 persons. So, but if we are finished, we'll wrap up here. We're finished. If you guys have questions, please communicate on Moodle. Go on Focus. Do some great interact with each other about some of the discussions you've heard. I used to do that when I had a face-to-face class, but when I'm at Georgetown, and I spare no time to leave. Once I leave the class, anything that piques my interest, I am going to read about it. I read about it, and then I ask questions, and I post it up I post it to the whole group on the post forum, and I even share questions, professor, and email the professor. It shows you are interested in what you are doing. That's how you learn. Okay, that is how you retain. That's how you retain stuff. Say, for example, I remember this idea about question begging epitaph. I learned that from way back. You want to engage the subject matter. Some of what I discussed, you may not understand everything that I have just said and the way I presented it. You may want you want to discuss it, go into it a little bit more. That's great, we can do that. But critical thinking is vital and indispensable to the study of post-colonialism and to Caribbean thinking, Caribbean thought, as to discourse. So that it was very important that I present that to you today. Now, I'm going to share the PowerPoint presentation And I will also share a summarized version of the PowerPoint presentation summarizes everything. But as it relates to people like Immanuel Kant and Descartes and Michel Foucault, I'm not sure. As it relates to Michel Foucault, Descartes, and Homi Bhabha and so on, we will delve into those people some more, okay? Because those people have helped to influence the Caribbean minds. So when we study diverse currents in Caribbean, the people from the Caribbean who were studying, they were influenced by something, by thinkers before them, and some of their contemporaries, who are those people, Michel Foucault and so on, and Kant, and of course we want to look at Newtonian physics, because Newtonian physics, some of Newtonian physics is what has helped to build the society we have today, the traditions that we hold, religious values, and our legal system. But okay, we're challenging that today, but that's about it. We finish that. We end here. Thank you guys. So any Maxine, do you still have that question?
She left, sir.
Okay,
sorry, the class rep, Dana supposed to be the class rep.
Who is the class rep? Dane?
Yes,
Dane.
sir.
All right, Dane, that means you have to communicate with myself and Chantel, and communicate with your classmates and so on. Help us to, okay, that's good. Anything on the ground, bring it to our attention and so on, and help to. So you will be the class rep, and we will talk later about this. What we need to do now, we need to organize the groups. So I will work on organizing the group with you for next week. After the presentation next week, I'll put you in groups. Some of you did not submit the assignment for this week, which was, you didn't realize it was so easy. Okay, so please do it. You will be graded for it. It go towards your grade. Please remember to read chapters 1 to 3 of Neoliberalism. There's a copy of the book that's in the library. You can get it in e-format as well, the e-book.
Is that the assignment, please?
The assignment to trace your genealogy. Some of you haven't done it. And I think I have a homework that I posted up in the forum group. I don't remember what the homework was for this week. I posted it up in the group. I'm going to check it again. That is due on Monday. I will find out what it is. What I will do as usual, I will summarize this class, send it out to you guys, and the homework that you guys, and the only thing you guys have to do is just to interact with this whole issue of trace your your heritage, and why don't you know? We don't know. Susie, go ahead.
Yes, sir. It is the assignment that I was listening for, because my internet is like going in and out.
I will send an email.
Okay.
I want you guys to be fully prepared for next week. There is a website by the UIHS, and the article that I've read, read the article. There is a deep up there. If you go to the Neoliberal.com, there's a longer article that speaks to the Indian heritage. I want you guys to come ready to ask questions. So familiarize yourself with that issue about tracing the heritage. Send me information. Okay? But that's about it for class today. If you have any questions, you can send it in the chat or send me an email. Include myself and Dane on it, because sometimes I didn't respond right away. Okay? So that's about it. Thank you guys. This was great. I will also access some of the previous recordings of this class last semester. Some of the topics we were delving into with email. Thank you guys, and I wish you all the best. I pray that God will guide you. I pray that God will expand you. I pray that God will. I pray He will strengthen you. Surround these leaders. And I pray that the time to go at JGS will be one that is powerful and impacted. And whatever they're going through in their life, I pray that you will meet them where they need you. Provide for them, provide opportunities for them, let them see the opportunities, teach them how to access opportunities, Lord God, and help them, Lord, to be open and affirming, in the sense that if they need anything, not to pretend as if they don't need it. Okay, not to live a life of pretense. Help us to be so humble so that we're not afraid to share our life with others as a way to let people know what. So Lord, help us not to be afraid or to live a life that is that that expand, that hide the truth, but help us to be truthful to each other so that we can help one another. Help us to help each other, to love one another, and expand our knowledge and our mind as we embark on this powerful journey. These and other mercies we ask. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you guys. This class is, yeah, man, I will share the recording of this class after the recording is available. I believe if you have a link, if you have this link to this class, you should be, if not, then I'll send you the link to the class. So I will send you the link to the class shortly.
Okay, sir. Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye. Yeah, all the class is recorded. You'll be able to access it. The last one and this one, so I will send it to you so you have access to it.
And the PowerPoint as you promised.
And the PowerPoint, yes. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Chantel and Dan remind me to do that. Tomorrow, I'm about to go to bed. Take care.
All right. Take care.
Yeah, man.